like this crowd.
Chuck is the theatrical person, so the lights and the media make me a little nervous. So
But
I'm
yet,
just
did you notice she stepped right into her light without any prompting? She knows what she's doing.
Oh, maybe we should have a microphone. Can you guys hear us okay? Perfect. I wanted to welcome you guys here, and I would like to give an award to the person that drove the farthest. It's probably, I don't actually have an award for that, but I'm going to say probably in this room, Harrisburg, was it? Maybe Christy from DCED. Oh, it was Scranton, so Todd gets an award.
Okay, Todd, come to the Impact Quarry office. We will find a prize.
Yeah. But truly, it took Ralph and I about 2.5 hours to get out here, and it was 2.5 hours where I wasn't on an email, I didn't have my phone with me. It was completely embracing the beautiful fall foliage that's happening. So I'm hoping that everybody else experienced the beautiful fall foliage across the entire Route 6 corridor and all of the counties that we serve. I wanted to give a shout out to our committee. Chuck Gray, Impact Quarry, this lady is a magician, and she's completely amazing. She put together this flip book plus a cool video, and Adam also for putting together some video. Thanks, Adam. Cherie from the chamber. Woo, woo, woo. Yes. Wendy Neckers from Painted Finch.
She was so subtle. Wendy, come on.
Melinda Meyer from Preservation Erie, and Route 6 Board.
And Impact Quarry.
And Impact Quarry. Chris Temple from Visit Erie, and Ralph. Ralph is right on back here. He's the glue that holds Route 6 together, truly. But this committee has really rolled out the carpet for everybody that's coming here at this conference. So please do not miss. You have a flip book here that is beautifully and created. Use it. Go. How was the champagne and yoga? Go to some kickboxing. Go play a round of golf. Farm to table dinner that's happening tonight. The food is going to be amazing that you're having here. And just housekeeping. If you flip your name badge around, it's very easily tells you where you need to be, where you signed up for, and how to get there. So. Yes, it's not our first rodeo.
I know.
But thank you for all. I do want to say a special thank you to our sponsors who have made this event possible. Erie Insurance, thank you very much. ECRA, the EADS Group, where's Mark? He's here somewhere. Visit Erie, PA Humanities Council, Community Heart and Soul, Downtown Quarry Business Association. You guys can still keep clapping. JB Media Group, Quarry Chamber, and Impact Quarry.
And Northwest Bank.
And Northwest Bank. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck just to give another little welcome. And then we also want Cherie to just tell you a little bit about your bags.
Yes. So welcome to Quarry. We decided to gang this great event up with our Climax and Corsets Arts and Innovation Festival. So there are events throughout today, tomorrow, and Saturday that the public will also be at, but you're fully welcome to join. And I do want to tell you, yes, our title's a little racy, and we like that. But very quickly, the Climax engine and locomotive was created here that was used in mining as well as timbering. It's a narrow gauge with a special cog. Oh, you don't need to know all that. It goes up and down hills where trains can't go. And we're very proud of it, as you'll see by the mural across the street. And the new bone corsets revolutionized corsets by taking the whale bones out that could actually snap and kill you. They were so popular that the demand for shipping was that the U.S. federal government built the Quarry Post Office to service the new bone demand. And if you get a chance to visit the post office today, it's right up the street. Maybe Cherie will take you there. It is magnificent. So we're very proud of that heritage, and we're turning it into, we're taking that innovation spirit and moving it into the digital age here in Quarry. So we're celebrating the past, but looking towards the future. Tomorrow, too, if you want to stay on, 5 o'clock, weather permitting, hot air balloons will go over Corey. 5:30, the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts will be presenting at the Impact Corey offices regarding a bunch of art projects that we've been doing. First Friday in Corey rocks every month that it's held, so all the events are in here. And I'm just letting you know, if during today or tomorrow, I still have 2 capes left for dancers for the illumination parade. So let me know, because we're going to have a blast. And Miss Cherie.
Thank you, Chuck, for everything. We wouldn't be here without her. She's pretty darn amazing, I must say. Wendy. My name is Cherie Dickey. I am with the Corey Area Chamber of Commerce, relatively new to that position. These are our awesome swags. I will have to tell you, the Corey businesses came out and gave you guys some pretty amazing stuff. So Epiphany's Emporium, thank you, gave you some specialty sodas. The entire Downtown Corey Business Association put together a packet for you guys. So there's coupons in there for you to go shopping at our local shops this weekend. They've got flyers about what they're doing. Thank you, Rossbacher Insurance, for supplying all of us with our water that we will need to stay hydrated, and some cool pens.
Everybody needs an inspiration.
Yes, Emmanuel Episcopal Church has given everybody a prayer rock. Just tons of stuff. You also have in here our directory for the Corey area. So if you have questions about, is there someplace else I can eat, something cool I can go check out? 1, you can always find me. I will be here. 2, the directory is in there. So feel free to peruse that. And then we've got our awesome Do 6 brochures. Please, everybody.
Hot off the press, it still smells crispy.
Yes. I swear they were warm yesterday, but that just could have been for the 2-hour car ride. And then one of our only local creamery is offering you guys 2 free scoops of ice cream. So that creamery is pretty awesome. They're actually my next door neighbors. They're pretty neat. The milk in there literally comes from here in Corey. So they process it right there on site. If they're making milk today, you'd be able to actually see them. They turn the lights on so you can watch what they're doing back there. So, and any questions, let us know. And thank you again all for coming to Corey.
Thank you, Cherie. Les Uteg, you are up, sir. If anybody wants to say this is an amazing building that we're in, this is the guy that made it happen. So he's going to give us a little bit about this really cool adaptive reuse project.
Well, thank you. Yes, my name is Les Uteg. I pastor the church here, my wife and I. My wife can't be here today, so I get to be the one speaking. So my journey began here about 15 years ago. I'm a Corey kid, pastoring a church 15 years ago in a little community called Columbus, Pennsylvania, not far from here, in a little white steeple church. And for me, I felt like I was a trapped individual in a white steeple church. I was not a church-going person. So in the vision that I had for planning a church, it was something different than a white steeple church. Over about the next 5 years, some things happened. We ended up here in Corey at our local community center, and we were in a community center for about 2 years. And as we were in that community center meeting weekly there, we saw this location kind of vacant. It was not being occupied at the time. I actually knew the business owner that owned it really well. And one day I ran into him and said, hey, what would be the opportunities of maybe leasing your facility or purchasing your facility? He's like, I never thought about that, So in 2014, we signed a lease agreement with him, and we began an 18-month renovation of this facility. The facility was built in the mid to late 50s. Originally, it was a Loblaws grocery store. Over the next, however many years, there's many different grocery stores in here. The last one that was in here was called Sanders Market, which is now a new location on Center Street where Quality Markets was. So in 2014, we began the renovation of the project. I'm an industrial kind of a guy. I'm a bricks and mortar kind of a guy too. So when you start talking about building buildings, you start looking at the cash registers going cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Here's a location, 15,000 square feet. We're like, hey, we could do a lot with this building. We don't have to build a building, we don't have to permit, we don't have to this, we don't have to that. So it only made sense for us as a little church to do something like this. So over the next 18 months through renovation, and the help of some local business individuals that helped offset some things and kind of expedite the financial part of it, we are blessed to be in here since December of 2015. And again, the simplistic manner of renovating a grocery store is you have a free, like a blank slate. You know, there's no walls in here. You can do whatever you want. And as we approached this, my wife and I, we both agreed we just wanted something simple. We wanted something also that didn't scream church. You know, we wanted to be a facility that could be used for multiple things within our community. We have our local YMCA has their graduation here. We have multiple youth beauty pageants here. We have music concerts here. We have a Christmas concert here. And it all started with a vision that my wife had. The prophet Isaiah wrote in Isaiah 58, and bear with me for a second. He wrote these words, and this is really where this all came from, utilizing this space instead of building something new here in Corey. Isaiah wrote these words. He says, "Those from among you shall build the old waste places. You shall rise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the restorer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in." And that was really kind of the vision behind taking a vacant facility and turning it into something that was being utilized weekly, multiple days of the week. So I just want to say thank you for the Route 6 committee for allowing us to be a part of this. Thank you all for being here today. If you have any questions, I'll be here all day long. And again, just enjoy your time. And again, thanks for everything.
Thank you so much, Les. This place is incredibly amazing, and it certainly gives me the warm and fuzzies to be here. But thank you. We have a really great lineup of speakers today. We have about 10 people speaking, so introductions are going to be mighty short so you can get the best bang for your buck while you're here. So our first speaker is Bill Callahan from PHMC. And we'll also have Melinda Meyer here as well from Preservation Erie, and they're going to be talking about some historic preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
So we were down here, but
Oh.
we're going to get you right up on the stage. You can get the stuff right over.
Well, you're all in for it now. Okay, I haven't tripped yet. Good morning, everybody. I see some familiar faces. That's great because feels like it's still been years since we got out and all got to see each other. I'm Bill Callahan. I'm the Western Pennsylvania representative for the State Historic Preservation Office, part of the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. Really want to thank Route 6, Candace, for asking me to come up. I live in Pittsburgh. Ralph, thanks for coordinating all this stuff that we're doing here. Chuck, thanks for hosting this event. I haven't been in Corey for a few years. Downtown Corey is one of several Erie County main streets that are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And I have to tell you, Corey just looks great. I mean, the light was just right this morning. I walked around a little bit and it looks great. It looks like there's plenty of small businesses there, and the buildings look great themselves. So thanks, Chuck. And Pastor, thank you for the use of this lovely facility. This is fantastic. Really appreciate it. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do this morning, is a speed dating style of kind of talking about historic preservation in a manner that hopefully might put away some perspectives, perhaps, that some folks might have about what preservation is, and just kind of how we go about, in a very brief way, how we go about utilizing preservation as a community and economic development tool. Let's see if I can figure this out. Or this way? I work for the State Historic Preservation Office, and we administer all of the federal and state historic preservation programs for the Commonwealth. I'm based in Pittsburgh. Most of the other folks are back in Harrisburg. And we administer things like the National Register of Places, rehabilitation investment tax credits for federal and state taxes, the Certified Local Government Program. We do historic building surveys. We have an archaeology program, and we do a lot of planning and technical assistance for communities that are interested in using preservation as an economic and community development tool. There is, I think most people understand to some extent the kind of cultural, local value of preserving those places that are important in our history locally in the communities that we live in, kind of what makes our homes feel like home. But I think what a lot of folks maybe don't have as solid a grasp on is how important the economic development side of preservation is. And just real briefly, I'll talk a little bit about that. There is study after study that has been, pardon me for turning my back on you, study after study about the economic value of understanding our historic places, our historic buildings as assets, as part of a larger strategy to promote economic development in our communities. The easiest one to usually talk about is heritage tourism. Of course, state heritage areas, national heritage areas, we're just a little bit outside the oil region national heritage area, of course, Route 6. I always get tired when I think about Candace's job because it stretches from one end of the Commonwealth to the other and all the counties that it goes through. But these heritage quarters, heritage areas, a founding principle of their existence is the fact that smaller communities have valuable historic resources, valuable historic assets that can be turned into economic development opportunities. The idea of the traveling public, people who come to see places that have historic character, is not a new principle. It's a well-established principle in terms of the folks who work in the tourism industry, of course. If you think about tourism as the second largest industry in Pennsylvania, which it is, the heritage tourism component of that, depending on how you add the dollars, tourists don't need to necessarily come from Arizona or New Mexico. Tourists come from places like Pittsburgh, Erie. They come from the Poconos. People who drive through the community. My parents, until they had to hang up their leathers, rode a Harley-Davidson motorcycle all over the continent. And one of their favorite, and I'm not lying about this, one of their favorite trips was across Route 6. They didn't do interstates. They always did 2-lane roads. They loved the communities they went through. They would call me and say, hey, have you ever been to such and such a town? Have you ever been to that town? It's people like my folks who are passing through, looking for opportunities to experience the history of this country as it's exhibited in, we good now? As it's exhibited in our communities. And the Route 6 corridor is kind of a shining example of how that structure can be created and invested in to help our smaller communities collectively promote heritage tourism along even a vast route like Route 6. I had the great fortune, I've now worked in 3 different state historic preservation offices, and Route 6 has gone through all of them. So there is a national association that's associated with Route 6, and their core value is this development of heritage tourism. It's hard for me to overstate how important the economic side of this is. That we acknowledge that historic character is what brings people to these communities and through places like the Route 6 Heritage Corridor. Again, study after study after study shows that when we invest in a rehabilitation ethic of economic development, that the dollars that are spent in these places tend to be more locally held. Preservation, there's a kind of perspective that preservation is more expensive than other kinds of economic development. It's not generally true. It is more labor intensive, so your costs go more towards labor, but the labor tends to be local. The materials that are used for a rehabilitation ethic tend to be local. They tend not to be as often imported from other places. And the increase in the local tax base tends to be greater if a community follows a rehabilitation ethic in their community and economic development moving forward with community and economic development strategies. I have an entire 45-minute long presentation about all the studies that have been completed about how preservation, is it working? Are we okay now? No? Yes? I can talk into this so we can fix it. We're good. Okay, forget it. Now it's this has been studied to death, and I've been doing this for 35 years, and one of the things that fascinates me, is that there's often kind of pushback about preservation, looking at historic buildings, older buildings, as an economic development tool, as opposed to an impediment to economic development and new development. This has been studied so often, it's a little bit laughable that perspective is still out there. I can tell you with confidence, because I know, because there's facts to back this up, that pursuing a rehabilitation design ethic in your community with historic buildings is a solid economic development principle and strategy. I'm not saying it's the only strategy or it's the only piece of an economic development structure, but if in the communities that we all live in, all of us here, isn't pursuing preservation as part of a larger economic development strategy, you're missing a significant component of having a successful economic development strategy. So that's, okay, so, and one of the best parts about it that I personally appreciate is this idea that in terms of workforce development locally, in terms of, preservation is a much better tool because you develop that local labor, you develop those materials that you use to rehabilitate an historic building. That's all local dollars that circulate locally and don't go to a corporation somewhere else. When we talk about preservation, I think one of the things that there's a long-standing perspective, belief, that, and some of this folks who worked in preservation or advocated for preservation in decades past may well have been guilty of, but that somehow preservation was something that we did as a quality of life issue, as a kind of wine and cheese club issue, that we looked at pretty buildings and we recognized the banker's house on the hill, and that was what preservation was all about. I grew up on a hog farm in West Central Illinois. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is smaller communities being successful in the long term. And so the way I and people who work in preservation in the 21st century try to describe preservation is as a design ethic that takes into account local design principles. So if you look at how your community was built over time, who built your community over time, the materials they used, the strategies and patterns of development that they used, those are assets. Those are important assets. Nobody wants to live in, well, most people don't want to live in a museum. We do want to live in places that have some level of authenticity to the way we live, where we want to live. So it's a design ethic based in historic design principles in your community. That's basically how I like to think about preservation as an ethic. So if we accept the fact that preservation is a good economic community development tool, how do we do that? And I'll tell you right now, it's complicated. This isn't like this isn't as easy as buying 20 acres, bringing in a couple of excavators and a Morton building and building your metal industrial ship. The first thing that we have to do is kind of identify some basic principles to think about. We have to identify what we mean by historic properties. We need to engage the public. It's critical to do that, and other stakeholders. We need to define, what do we need? What does this community need right now, and how do historic places fit into that need? What are we thinking about? What do we want to be eventually? And we need to develop, we need to write this all down. So I'm just going to real quick go back over these kind of one by one. Every old building doesn't necessarily fit into this strategy or pattern of economic community development. So what we have to do is we have to define ourselves in our communities what we do mean by that. We can do that by doing building inventories, historic building strategies. In Corey here a few years back, we did exactly that. We inventoried, we did a survey of a big chunk of the community and identified then the downtown, and I think maybe the park, as these character-defining elements of Corey that we really need to look at in terms of the economic development strategy of the community. So you actually have to go out and look to see, what do we mean by this? What do we mean by historic building? Because every old building doesn't fit into this context. It's critically important, and you all know this, everybody in this room knows this. We have to let people know what we're doing and why. And we also have to provide folks an opportunity to tell us what they value, what they want to see happen, how they want to see things go. It's this back and forth, this public engagement, this community engagement process is absolutely critical. And it has to be folks who live in the community, people who own property, people who own buildings, elected officials, administrative staff in the municipality, anybody who has a stake in the community's future or has something in their own future that they want to have a say in terms of what the community is going to look like eventually. And we're actually very fortunate to live, and I've been the community engagement component of preservation is something I've worked on really hard in my entire career, and it's gotten simultaneously, you all know this, easier and more complicated because we can get to people more easily than we used to be able to. We can get to more people than we used to be able to, but it's also easier to get to people, and there's more people to talk to. So there's a yin and a yang there. Personally, I think it's a good thing, and we should use every single strategy that we can to get to people and talk to them about what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, why it's important, and also get that feedback. We have to listen. Doesn't mean every crazy idea is necessarily something we're going to go implement later, but we do have to listen. We have to make some attempt to document and respond to how the public tells us what they want. This is also a vital component of what we need to do. Every community has its own needs and challenges. In the community I live in a 1,300 square foot, very small bedroom house in a neighborhood where people with more money than I'll ever be able to count to have started buying 2 lots and tearing 2 houses down and building one giant house, which completely changes the whole reason why they want to live in my town. Kind of starting to go out the window because people are doing this. That's one need. That's one challenge, but that's not a challenge that happens in every community. Other communities have enormous amounts, decades of disinvestment in their historic resources. Other places, there may be a very critical need for explaining to folks what we mean by preservation. We're not here to tell you what to do with your life or even necessarily what to do every minute of every day with your house or your business or your building, but we are here to show why it's important for our community's future that we take into account your buildings, your businesses, your homes as part of our long-term community development strategies. That education component is something that's critical, but is that the highest need in your community? It might be. So we really need to kind of try to identify what it is we're trying to solve, at least in part. And we have to be able to say, we want to be able to say, and this is part of the process, where do we want to be in 50 years? And 50 years to me is not a historian, what am I going to say? 50 years is not a crazy way to think about how you want your community to look. Places develop over decades. I don't know why we would expect change, positive change, to take place overnight. I'm as impatient, maybe more impatient than the next person. But I also understand that these long-term strategies need to be considered long-term. We can phase them, we can explain why it might take a long time, but we also need to articulate what we think we want out of our community, the physical character of our community in 10, 15, 50 years. It's important to be able to establish that vision. Nobody wants to pay for a plan. Nobody wants to plan. It's boring, right? Just going to sit on a shelf. If it's just sitting on a shelf, it's because you didn't do it right. A a plan like this should be a dynamic, integral part of any long-term community and economic development strategy. It needs to be practical, it needs to be simple, it needs to be implementable. It also needs to be something that we look at every 5 to 10 years. It doesn't need to be crazy complicated. In fact, it shouldn't be crazy complicated. It just needs to be something that we write down and use as a policy moving forward. It also doesn't mean that we can't amend it, that we can't say, you know what, this isn't going to work. Things have changed. There was this pandemic thing that happened, so we need to change some of this. That's okay too. It's not written in stone somehow. But it is important to write it all down, make sure that we have some clear goals, and put names to the people who are going to implement the changes and the strategies and the actions to get to those goals. During the process of this planning component, it's important that people understand that there's going to be some responsibility across the board for people to implement this policy and to look at preservation as part of this larger strategy that we're trying to develop. Okay. I tell people always wait till the last to talk about the money, because otherwise just get up and leave when I talk about the money. We don't have as much money as my friends at DCNR with the Keystone funds, but we do have Keystone Historic Preservation grants that can help facilitate just exactly the kind of process that I just described. The project grants and our construction grants are one-to-one cash match grants. Qualified nonprofits and municipal governments can both apply for and implement Keystone grants. Corey's Downtown Historic District was funded in part by a Keystone Historic Preservation Project grant. I think the applicant was Preservation Erie, or who was the applicant? I don't remember now. It was Impact Corey. Thank you. Yeah, that's right, it was Impact Corey. Impact Corey applied for and received a Keystone grant to help pay for that National Register designation of their essentially their downtown, a little bit larger. They're not huge grants. The project grants are for up to $25,000 our share. Construction grants are up to $100,000 our share, but they can provide that opportunity for a funding gap. We are one of the agencies that will pay for planning. Many foundations, private funding, kind of look askance at planning sometimes. The nice thing about planning is, and this is not only does it give the community this kind of policy document about how to move forward, it's also a good way, the best way, to go and ask for other funding. So once you have your goals in place, you can go to a funder and say, this is what we want to do. Look, this is a community-vetted exercise that we know is a priority in our community. Can you help us pay for this in the future? And Erie County has, communities in Erie County have managed to leverage their countywide historic preservation, their heritage preservation plan into multiple other preservation projects around the county. So I can't say enough about how having a solid plan in place can help you then go find additional funding to implement other more sexy kinds of preservation projects than just planning. The construction grants, just what they sound like. The brick and mortar grants, nonprofit entities and units of local government can apply for funding to rehabilitate historic buildings. Buildings that are listed in the National Register of Historic Places or are eligible for listing in the National Register. And then there's the Rehabilitation Investment Tax Credit Program. There's both a federal and a state RITC. Our office facilitates the federal program. In Pennsylvania, the National Park Service is the ultimate arbiter of this program. In the state tax credit, our office provides design. We're the design partner in the state tax credit. And Department of Community and Economic Development manages the actual credit itself at the state level. That's it. That's my speed dating version of preservation. Every single component of this presentation, I have a larger, 45-minute thing that I'd be happy to bring to your community anytime if you'd like me to come talk to you. My contact information is up here. wcallahan@pa.gov is the best way to track me down and set up a time to talk, because I do a lot of this kind of thing, and not often in my office. So thank you so much for your kind attention, and I think we're holding questions till after, is that correct?
All right, next up, Melinda Meyer from Preservation Erie and Route 6 Board.
I was actually looking forward to not speaking with the microphone. So it's fantastic that everything has been addressed, but I was actually looking forward to using the excuse to bound up and down the aisle because I move when I talk. So this is going to be incredibly difficult for me, but and you'll get to hear occasionally the nerves kick in, right? So you also get to hear the right, with the microphone. In any case, yes, my name is Melinda Meyer. I do now work for Impact Corey, which is really exciting as of a month ago. And the presentation today is actually focused on the work with Preservation Erie. I'm also not sure how far I can I move? Okay. So Preservation Erie is a nonprofit managed with an all-volunteer board. We have been in existence for about 16 years. And the reason Preservation Erie was formed is because the community had lost quite a number of significant landmarks in a short period of time. And there really wasn't a voice for historic preservation in the Erie County community at the time. And so the group of individuals who were passionate about Erie's historic resources really they got together in someone's living room. And over time, they decided it was better to incorporate as an organization. And again, here we are 16 years later. The clicker. So I'm not going to go into detail about what historic preservation is because I think Bill did an excellent job. And just so you know, as we go through these slides and we talk about some of the projects that have been accomplished here in Erie County, I do want to acknowledge our partners. The Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office, and specifically Bill, have been fantastic partners to work with. We also have worked with Preservation Pennsylvania. Preservation Pennsylvania is the statewide advocacy organization. Preservation Erie is very similar to Preservation Pennsylvania in that a lot of our work is focused on advocacy, education, providing technical assistance, and building the capacity of those who either own historic properties or perhaps are engaging in community planning. We also have, I refer to them as partnerships, but we have a number of funders too that have been instrumental in supporting the work that we're going to be talking about. So the Erie Community Foundation has supported some of our projects, the Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority. So the work that we're about to talk about, again, we engage with lots of different partners to do this work. So historic preservation, I again think Bill did an excellent job summarizing. When we think about historic preservation, we're really talking about maintaining, preserving the appearance and or existence of our community's tangible and intangible resources. And I think when we talk about historic preservation, it's pretty easy for us to think about the tangible resources, right? We've got a number of photographs here that can attest to the types of tangible resources we have in our communities that are important historically, culturally, to our communities. They might be buildings of faith, certainly our school buildings, it might be a city hall, it could be a social club, an ethnic social club, or it could be an industrial site. It could be the statue in the Central Park. It could be, in some cases, active or remnants of transportation resources. We have a photograph here of a rail line, as well as a photograph of the replica Brig Niagara. So those are tangible resources, right? When we talk about historic preservation, those probably come to mind immediately. That's what you think about. Intangible resources are just as important and worthy of preservation, and these are the community stories that may or may not be written down. They could be the community stories that are passed down from generation to generation through storytelling. These could be our cultural traditions like festivals, right? So those two are historic resources worthy of preservation. So when or how do we incorporate this idea or concept of historic preservation into what the community is already doing? Well, a great time to start talking about historic preservation and how to weave historic preservation into the community's activities happens to be anytime there's a planning discussion, right? Whether it's a large community planning discussion like development of a comprehensive plan, or a small planning discussion like the planning for, or the development of a master plan for a park, right? All of those planning efforts are opportunities to talk about historic resources and how to best care for them. Or community revitalization efforts, right? Although community revitalization efforts often piggyback on some type of planning activity. So the slides I'm going to go through today really will take you through the experiences and projects that Preservation Erie specifically has had the opportunity to work with throughout Erie County. And it is an example of how we've actually implemented, right, the inclusion of historic preservation principles and practices into multiple planning efforts that have built on one another. One of the first questions that we started asking ourselves when we, as an organization, when Preservation Erie as an organization sat down with our board, was, okay, well, what are we preserving? What matters to us? What matters to the community? So we very quickly determined that the first thing we needed to do was institute a county-wide historic resource survey. This isn't an easy task. We were very fortunate to find the funding. We were very fortunate to find a consultant who was willing to do the work within our budget. And as a result, over a 2 to 3 year period, we did an update. I shouldn't say this is, I don't want to refer to this as a new survey. This was an update of a previously completed survey. So the data that had been collected in 1982 was old, right? There were resources that had been demolished. There were other resources that weren't counted as historic as part of that 1982 inventory, but were historic when we get to 2012. Again, over a 2 to 3 year period, we conducted a county-wide historic resource survey, updating the data that had been collected in 1982. The resulting survey data was then published through the website eriebuildings.info. And again, I can't stress how important this survey process was, because it gave us an opportunity to engage with communities throughout Erie County. So instead of just talking with folks in the city of Erie, what they think is important, we went out to Corey, we went out to Albion, we went out to Girard, we went out to all of these communities throughout the county and had conversations within their community about the resources that were included in the 1982 inventory and how they may have changed. And we did have a an opportunity to talk about new resources that may have not been included in 1982 but should have been included. Through those discussions, we were able to get people engaged in the process and excited about historic preservation. Building off of the success of the county-wide inventory, we thought, okay, now we've done an update of this inventory. We have massive amounts of data. We've got a map that shows 32,000 pinpoints, because that's how many resources were looked at as part of that survey process. 32,000 historic resources. What do we do with this data? So the county's comprehensive plan was way outdated, and the portion about historic preservation was very minimal. So here in Pennsylvania, the comprehensive planning process is required to include a section about or that address our historic and natural resources. So thankfully, because of state legislation, we knew that, one, comprehensive plans really should be updated every 10 years, and the county comp plan was more than 10 years old. And two, it had to include a section about historic and natural resources. So we used that to develop a partnership with the county planning office, who agreed to work with us to develop a county-wide heritage preservation plan, cultural heritage preservation plan. Because again, we didn't want to just focus on the tangible. We wanted to make sure that the intangible was included as part of this planning process, which is why we chose the name Cultural Heritage Plan as opposed to Historic Preservation Plan. So we used the fact that the county's comprehensive plan was outdated and the state's requirement that comprehensive plans be updated every 10 years as justification for development of this cultural heritage plan. The county planning office got on board with us. Together we raised the grant funds to support this planning process, and it spanned about a 1-year period. As a result, we had identified 3 goals for the county with regards to cultural and historic preservation. We wanted to build the capacity of those who own properties as well as our municipalities throughout the entire county. We also wanted to promote responsible stewardship, and we wanted to raise awareness of the cultural resources found throughout the county, because we believe they are important to the story that we tell. And not only will it attract new residents to the county, but also visitors. And know that I'm providing the least amount of information possible, right? We could actually spend an entire presentation just talking about the Cultural Heritage Plan of Erie County alone. We're not going to do that to you in today's presentation. But so there were other planning processes taking place. At the same time, the county's Cultural Heritage Plan was in process. One was the development of the City of Erie's comprehensive plan. Now, if you are to look at the comprehensive plan for the City of Erie, you will not find an individual section labeled historic and natural resources. Instead, the City of Erie's comprehensive plan, the consultants that worked on this project actually wove historic preservation throughout the entire plan. So every section of the plan, you can find information and/or ideas that pertain to historic preservation, as opposed to just lumping them all into a single section. But once this plan was finished, an action plan was developed. The action plan included this particular recommendation: to expand the mission of the Design Review Board to act as a historic advisory committee. And from there, we used that as a launching pad, right? So this recommendation was found in the City of Erie's Historic Preservation Plan. We thought, okay, we're going to use the recommendations in the recently completed County Cultural Heritage Plan, marry that with this recommendation in the action plan for Erie Refocused, and we're going to have a real conversation with the City of Erie about historic preservation. Fortunately, the City of Erie's planner was very open to incorporating historic preservation principles and ideas into what the city was doing, and fully embraced our discussion. So as a result of this one recommendation, we were able to leverage that to broaden kind of the scope of activities within the City of Erie. So the city ultimately formed a historic preservation task force, which was also authorized by both the mayor and city council. The task force had a 2-year life, and their job was to develop a plan for the city in creating a historic preservation program, the first historic preservation program for the City of Erie. Out of the task force came the implementation or the passage of a revised ordinance, which created the Historic Review Commission. It also created a process for local designation, so the City of Erie can now formally designate historic resources, historic districts, and landmarks. And it allowed us to pursue certified local government designation. Certified local government designation is the Certified Local Government Program is a federally funded program. The funding goes from the federal government to the state historic preservation offices. So each state, they administer the Certified Local Government Program in their own state. To become a local certified government, you need to kind of check a number of boxes under the category of historic preservation. So you need to have a board like a historic review board, historic architecture review board, historic preservation commission, some authorizing entity that oversees historic preservation activities, as well as a process for designating historic districts. So those are some of the requirements of certified local government designation. In any case, the real carrot, why you would want to pursue CLG designation, is 2 primary reasons. One is technical assistance from the State Historic Preservation Office. So once you are a CLG, you actually receive additional support through the State Historic Preservation Office around historic preservation. 2, money. There's a grant program that can grant funds only to communities who have CLG designation. And those funds are to be used for historic preservation activities. So now the city has yet another avenue to pursue dollars for historic preservation activities. This single recommendation in this plan also allowed us to work with the Erie Downtown Partnership to develop design guidelines for the downtown of Erie, of the City of Erie. The Erie Downtown Partnership is the Main Street manager. They had design guidelines, but again, their design guidelines were 20 to 30 years old. And so we were able to work with them to develop design guidelines that are applicable to the city today and include what do you do if a building owner wants to put solar panels on a historic building, right? There are questions that we address today that were not being addressed necessarily 20 or 30 years ago. So this set of guidelines for the downtown, we are actually now going to be using that citywide. We've got a little bit of work to do that, but ultimately our goal is to use those design guidelines citywide. So I realized already I'm talking too much, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. So Bill already mentioned a little bit about the Corey Historic District. So when we were working on the countywide historic resource inventory, having these conversations about preservation in every community, we realized there were a number of National Register nominations that were just sitting there. They hadn't been completed. They'd been submitted, there were errors or missing information, and so the State Historic Preservation Office had written back to the communities saying, hey, these are the questions we want you to address. And that's where the conversation had ended. And so there were a number of National Register nominations that were 20 to 30 years old, just sitting on a shelf. So, and the communities, once we let them know that these National Register nominations were just simply sitting on a shelf, and it would just take a little bit of work to get them submitted and perhaps approved by the SHPO and the National Park Service, they were all on board. So Corey was one of the communities that was interested. The Corey Area Historical Society and Impact Corey were incredibly instrumental in building support and raising funds and then working with the consultants to get this project done. 2022, the Corey Historic District was formally added to the list of National Register places. Lawrence Park is another community. Lawrence Park is pretty cool. It is a community that was built by General Electric. It is an industrial village. And it also had interesting connections to an internationally known planner. So Lawrence Park, this is a really interesting community because of its connections to General Electric. It was formally added to the National Register in 2020, and I use these photographs to show you that National Register designation had an impact in the community almost immediately. So the bridge that you see diagonally, that's a photograph of the historic bridge, one of the entryways to the Lawrence Parks downtown. That historic bridge was added as a contributing or an important resource to the National Register Historic District. And shortly after designation was awarded, we found out that this bridge was structurally deficient and needed to be replaced. Now, some of you may have seen communities that had historic bridges like this, and they were placed with kind of flat concrete, nondescript, minimally designed bridges, right? We didn't want that to happen, and it didn't happen. So because this was a contributing resource to the Lawrence Park Historic District, PennDOT actually put in a whole lot of time making sure that the replacement bridge was comparable to the historic bridge. So I need to go back and get a photograph of the finished bridge, but you can see here the new bridge under construction. So without that National Register designation and without this bridge being a contributing resource, the community may have gotten less than what they deserved, right, with regards to the replacement bridge. In 2023, downtown Girard was added to the National Register of Historic Places. This community, we actually started slow in this community. They realized very quickly that they needed a nonprofit to assist with the revitalization efforts that we were talking about that involved historic preservation. And so a nonprofit was created called Downtown Girard, which now oversees kind of the Main Street revitalization activities in partnership with the borough itself. And a lot of their activities are actually run through council. I'm trying to think what's notable here. In addition to having a number of funding streams for facade improvements, this community did take on development of a master plan for the downtown, which was a very important project that was tied to the National Register designation. So we actually did both processes at the same time. We were working on the National Register nomination at the same time we were having community meetings about what residents wanted to see in their historic downtown. And the result is a 100-plus page master plan. But regardless of the number of pages, right, it has a list of recommendations, and those are going to be key priorities for the Downtown Girard Committee. Union City is just a rock star. They're doing amazing work. This is a National Register listed downtown that was listed on the National Register 20, 30 years ago. What I wanted to make note about Union City, though, is that in 2017, we worked with them to develop a historic preservation plan for their downtown. And it is a preservation plan that is very much unique and tailored to Union City's downtown. So this is a small downtown. They have about 19 historic buildings in their commercial corridor. And so rather than generating a plan that would include design guidelines solely, we wanted to provide additional assistance to property owners. So their historic preservation plan actually includes drawings of each of the 19 storefronts in their downtown. And the drawings are recommended alterations to their historic buildings, right? So if the property owners have questions about what is historically accurate and or what would be most ideal for improvements to their storefront, all they have to do is look at their building's rendering in the historic preservation plan. And the architects that developed those renderings work directly with the property owners to do that. So there are a number of other projects here. If you have questions about any of the work that we've talked about, please feel free to talk with us. And I think I'll end it there. So preservation does work, okay? So these communities, pay attention, because over the next 10 years, they're going to be doing amazing things.
Clicker, okay. About a little over 4.5 years ago, Impact Corey reorganized. We have a mission to revitalize rural through community, economic, and civic development. Why I mention that is that big of a job can't be done without partners. And when we started, we realized the pool we'd have to go to find out what would be most effective to do. And I would say I actually started meeting with corporate partners early on. And I actually met with Christina Marsh, who's here today, and I said, we want to make this work. You've seen this. You work with communities. What do we need to do? And then I took like 6 pages of legal pad notes. But Chris gave me the advice that you have to make a plan. And I want to bring that up because that was one of the very most important pieces of advice we received. We had to know where we were going, and we didn't want to scrimp on bringing in the planner and not having an effective plan at the end. So of course we borrowed the person that Erie used for Erie Refocused, Charles Buki, and we built this plan together. Now Erie had already done one, Erie Refocused, and why I bring that up is our next speaker attended a Metro 100, which is a convening where you talk about your civic issues together, in which Charles Buki was speaking. And he asked, this is so much, where do we even start? And from that, they took a road trip, they found a model, and that's what the Erie Downtown Development Corporation was based upon. And the EDDC is rocking it in Erie. So I would like to introduce to you the president and CEO of Erie Insurance, Tim Nicastro, and he's going to be talking about the stewardship they've provided, the involvement they've provided in revitalizing the Erie downtown. Thank you. And your clicker.
Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, we need some enthusiasm out there. Good morning, everybody. All right, very good. Hey, I'm happy to be here this morning. I was thinking about the comments, and I admittedly was not here at the beginning of the presentation, so if I contradict anybody while I'm up here, they were right, okay? Just keep that in mind. I wanted to talk to you a little bit this morning about how revitalization occurs in communities and how it's occurred in Erie. And kind of going back to Chuck's comments, we, in the beginning, when we were contemplating the needs of the community, we saw a whole lot of factors that were not working in our favor. All right, we had tremendous amounts of jobs lost because of industry moving out of town, being acquired by larger companies because of scale advantages that existed that way, moving corporate headquarters out of Erie, and so the population is declining. This was back in 2015, 2016. We also received the news that at the time, we were over 100,000, but for cities with populations over 100,000 people, Erie was the absolute worst in the United States to live in if you were African American. And the good news just kept coming and coming. And I was about to become the leader of the company. And our company has been active, Erie's been active in the community for a long time, but the type of activities are quite different today than they were back then. Back in 2015, 2016, we had a lot of philanthropic investment in nonprofits in the city of Erie, and we were helping many of them sustain their operations. But we realized as a corporate leader in the community, we had a responsibility to our community. It was our hometown. We started there almost 100 years ago. We started in 1925. Currently, let me just show you a few kind of dramatic pictures we have drone footage of some really cool stuff, but I didn't bring it today. But these are just some overheads. But this is our home office campus. And what you're going to see repeatedly through the photos that I'm going to show you this morning are historic buildings that have been preserved and part of our revitalization. All right. You know, oftentimes it's easy to come in and bulldoze something and start all over again. But when that bulldozer takes that building away, it doesn't just, as was pointed out by our previous speaker, it doesn't just take the bricks and steel away. It takes away a piece of history from that community, and that's part of the fabric of the community that we need to really strongly consider. You're going to hear later today from a couple of folks who I see out in the audience who are going to talk about different projects. I'm not going to steal their thunder, but it extends beyond office buildings in downtown. It's important to reuse assets that cities have, and we're seeing it in Erie in terms of repurposing schools, in terms of repurposing factories. You're going to hear about those things this afternoon. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about today was our role and why we took up the mantle in Erie to help be a leader in the community revitalization. I mentioned that we are we are the largest corporation in Erie. We're the only Fortune 500 company headquartered there, and we take that role seriously. And we realized that we couldn't necessarily do everything on our own, and so we began by building partnerships and building coalitions. I see Karen Billowith here. Karen's predecessor, Mike Batchelor, was part of that coalition building, and our two organizations began to work together, and principally because we realized that of all the funding that goes on in the city of Erie, about half of it comes through one of our two organizations, and so we thought it was probably a good time to start working together on this. But I quickly realized, and I was very new to this whole revitalization world, I quickly realized that there's a lot of components, a lot of constituents that need to be brought into that coalition. And if you think of it this way, if you think of the coalition existing of private businesses, government officials, elected officials, the public sector, the philanthropic sector, and then also what are the large institutions that are in the area? So typically you have a hospital or a school that can join in on that. And we undertook to engage people from those different communities in the discussion about what Erie could be. Now, we did have the benefit of the Buki plan that came out in 2015, and it was daunting. I remember one of the first things I did when I became CEO, my boss, Mr. Hagan, said, you know, there's a lot of work to do in Erie. Get familiar with this plan. And he sits it down. It's like 175 pages, and it's extremely detailed. And as was mentioned earlier, it wasn't done kind of with a broad brush. It was done neighborhood by neighborhood. And so when I met the author of the plan, I asked him, I said, well, where do you start? I mean, this is like, there's no way you can tackle this whole thing. He said, no. He said, pick a role. You guys are the big dog in downtown. Focus on downtown. And he said, much like a human body, if your core is weak, the rest of the body's not going to work either. And he pointed out example after example of cities where that was true. And the one he pointed out was Cincinnati, that he really thought Erie would mimic that one the most because of the corporate-led initiatives to get revitalization underway. And that's exactly how it all started. Now, on our own campus, we've undertaken historic preservation. This was a firehouse on French Street. It used to be the Puffer Belly Restaurant. If anybody has been to Erie before, you might remember that place. People are still angry with us because they closed, we bought it and turned it into an event center. We didn't know we were supposed to resurrect the Puffer Belly there, but we host a lot of events there. I see Brad Allen. I bet Brad has been at events at that Puffer Belly. We also took ownership of the Pennsylvania National Guard Armory on 6th and Parade Street, which is between our campus and perhaps the most blighted area in all of Erie, Pennsylvania, in the entire city. But what this revitalization did was, in addition to preserving the history of our city and this Parade Street corridor, which was at one time the main thoroughfare, separating east to west in Erie, but we sent a beacon of hope eastward, like, hey, look, we're coming over. There's help on the way. Your neighborhood isn't not being forgotten. And that building, you can kind of see a little bit of it in the inside. It's a really interesting building to work in and to visit. So if any of you are ever in Erie, reach out to Chris Marsh, and her and I will take you guys on a tour. We're very proud of what's happened there. What's that? Okay, I didn't realize that, Brad. You do have connections to the Armory. Awesome. These buildings that you see here are on what's called North Park Row in Erie. So we have a central square in Erie called Perry Square, and it's surrounded on one side by the City Hall, on the east side by Erie Insurance. These buildings are on the north side of it, and then to the south of it is our police station and the city of Erie. Well, these buildings were dilapidated. The ones that you see kind of behind and I know it's not real easy to see, but the one on the top right, that building was full of mannequins when we undertook to buy it. The former owner had a bar downstairs. It was not a great bar, not a real wholesome thing for Gannon students' parents to see when they came to town. Like, they'd drop their students off and they'd look across the street and go, "Oh my God, this is horrible." What had to happen in Erie is we had to build a business case to appeal to all those different constituents, to bring them to the table, to help us get engaged in revitalization. And because our company is historic oriented, our founder was a historian, our current chairman is, those of you who know him know there's almost nothing you can bring up in history that he doesn't know something about, and typically more than most people do. So he is definitely committed to it, as is our company. We wanted to do revitalization in the right way. And I'll rifle through these things. These properties, I mean, if you have in your town, I will bet you, if you have a main street, you've got buildings on your main street that look just like this on the outside, they look kind of cool. Then you go inside and you go, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And literally, it took us two months to clean out just one of these buildings. There was a trampoline. I mentioned all the mannequins. Yeah, the guy had mannequins in the windows looking over the park. It was a creepy, weird thing. Well, we did, as I said, we did a lot of work here. And what we built is a food hall, which has slips for 10 different vendors. There are 9 vendors in it today. We house a distillery there, and we also house a grocery store and a meat market in that area. There's also upstairs a number of apartments in these buildings, which are extremely well occupied. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The one on the top right again is on that North Park Row. The picture to the left is on our Main Street, State Street corridor, a property we bought, again, a historic building. It's 3 stories high. These buildings, as we've renovated them, part of the work is the renovation itself. Part of it is working within the coalition to be able to drive the money you need to get it done. And really, part of it is just identifying who's going to lead the effort and tell the story. Who's going to build the business case that wants everybody to be involved in this and get excited about it. I would tell you, it's important to have a plan. We had the big plan, but getting people engaged, we didn't really know exactly how that was going to work in the beginning. So I would say this to you, if you're undertaking revitalization, you don't have to have every piece of information. What you have to have is a vision and a passion and get people to believe in it. And what we found in Erie was the more we accomplished, the more people believed in it. Now, why would a corporation like ours, these are just some other photos I'll just flip through here, why would a corporation get involved in leading one of these efforts? I mean, we're trying to run a business. We're trying to make money. We're trying to hire employees. You know, we got the pandemic to deal with. Well, if you think about it, our business has been in Erie for 98 years, headquartered there. We're in 12 states. We're going to be a $10 billion company probably by the end of this year. But we looked at our area and we said, this is our hometown, and as it goes, we're going to go. Now, if Erie becomes a very undesirable place to live, well, Gannon's not going to have students coming downtown, and Erie Insurance isn't going to be able to attract employees downtown. So we made that appeal to many of the business owners in downtown, and we found a lot of people who were interested in leading, that were fed up with how things were going. And thankfully, we've come together, we've stayed together over the past 6 years, and we're making really tremendous progress. But we're doing it in a way that's thoughtful, and you know, you can't preserve everything, all right? Before I get anybody upset, one of the buildings we did not preserve was a McDonald's that was affectionately called the Crackdonald's, okay? It was the highest incidence of crime in all of Erie County occurred on the corner of 5th and State at the McDonald's. There were drug deals, there were fights, there were all kinds of stuff going on there. And but you know, when we undertook to acquire those properties, everybody knew we were coming, so guess what happened to the prices? They became mammoth. And that's where the funding comes in. That's where the coalitions come in, because if you can't get, no private institution who, unless they cared absolutely nothing about money, would have done what we did here, okay? And so we didn't have to shoulder it alone. Us, the funding members, Erie Community Foundation, us, many of the banks and the hospitals came together, and that money enabled us to raise more money from public sources. And one of the keys we found was that if you have a number of things going on in your community, and every one of those things is vying for funds, and they're working independent of each other, and they're calling representatives from the state gets confused on what's going on in your area. So I got to tell you, one of the first things to do is make sure you have a unified voice coming out of your particular area. That really helps an awful lot, and also you have to have some local money. You can't go with absolutely nothing coming out of your locale and expect the state or the federal government to come in. You've got to be able to amass some of those funds, right? So I think the why is pretty straightforward. Why should a corporation become involved? And you don't have to have a Fortune 500, $10 billion company. You know, every community in this state has companies who can lean into this. Sometimes they've just never been asked. Sometimes they're afraid they don't have the ability to do it. But if they have the resources and the will, and if their employees want to get involved, it only starts by getting one person on board, one company on board. And that success begins to beget success, kind of like what it did in downtown. We started to revitalize some buildings, and everybody's, you know, like Erie has said for hundreds of years, this will never work in Erie, oh, woe is us. And we have this crazy slogan, it's okay to love Erie. Does that sound kind of pathetic to you? Like, it's okay to love us. We got to get rid of that. We're trying to find it and eradicate it. I feel bad because Chris actually gave me a coffee mug that said that on it, and it was kind of cute at the time. And then the more I looked at it, I was like, so I took a Scotch-Brite and I got rid of the "it's okay to" part, and it just says "Love Erie" now. But you have to gain belief in yourself, and you have to engage people in discussions. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. There aren't ready-made forums in a lot of places. And probably compared to many communities in this room, we're a large community in Erie. So it's even more complicated there. But if you can identify the 3 or 4 or 5 leaders in the community and bring them together and have discussions, all you need to do is start to gain some consensus on a few things, and one by one, start to rack up some wins. And 7 years later, you'll look back and you'll have a 5-story rock climbing gym called Ascend going into your downtown. But I could actually show a slideshow all day of these different things we have going on. I would urge you to come visit it. And if you want to learn more in more detail, part of our, what we feel is our corporate responsibility, and I got to thank Chris for this. We have done a ton of work just to help different communities in the country. We actually have Detroit interested in studying what we did, because they aren't as far along as we are, as much publicity as they've gotten nationally, but they were in Erie this week, and they were like, this is amazing what you guys have done here. We're coming back. So Rocket Mortgage, we're going to get them to move their headquarters into Erie. That's our plan, our long-term plan. But anyways, we are happy to help. We are fortunate, like I said, there are very few companies in this area like us. We're fortunate to have resources. We're also fortunate to have experience, a lot of which was kind of earned by bumps and bruises and scars along the way. But we're a lot smarter now than we were when we got started. And if we can help you along the way, please know that the City of Erie and Erie Insurance are here to help you with where you are. There is so much opportunity in this state, and along this Route 6 corridor, which I've driven many times in my public accounting days, coming down to Erie Plastics and Corey Manufacturing and all those different companies that used to be here. It's sad to see some of the de-escalation or some of the shrinking that's gone on, but it's also should give us the resolve to pick up the mantle and get about bringing it back. This is a fantastic place to live. Gotta love snow, but it's a fantastic place to live otherwise. But anyways, thank you for having me here today. I know we're running a little bit late, and I'll be around for a little while, and thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
I'd like to invite Daria Devlin and Tina Mangine to the stage. We're going to present together, and I'll let them introduce themselves because they're strong, competent women.
Thanks. I'll let Tina go first.
Okay. And we'll give her the clicker.
Absolutely, she can run the show.
An age thing?
No, you're up first. That's
Do you want us to sit?
another seat.
There's three. We'll
The
put you,
black one, apparently I'm getting old.
we'll put you in the middle because it's your show. So my name's Tina Mangine. I'm with the Erie County Redevelopment Authority. And our business, our organization focuses on economic development, meaning we help businesses, we do real estate development. A lot of our focus and what we'll talk about today is industrial blight and adaptive reuse of old buildings.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daria Devlin. I currently serve as the Director of Social Impact for the Hammett Health Foundation, which is a foundation that supports UPMC Hammett. But I also serve as the Executive Director of the Erie Center for Arts and Technology, affectionately known as ECAT, which is the Erie replication of the Manchester Bidwell model. Some of you from downstate might be familiar with Manchester Bidwell. ECAT was formed to replicate that model up in Erie, and we're going to talk today about how we made our headquarters and kind of the bumps and bruises that we had to get there in a really cool adaptive reuse. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
And folks know me, so I've already done it.
Everybody knows you.
I shouldn't shut up at the beginning, so,
So, Tim DeCastro is a hard act to follow, as is Melinda and Bill. But everything they said, I think, is a great lead into what we're going to talk about. So, when we talk about revitalization and historic preservation, it does run the gamut. And in Erie, and much like in Corey and all the small towns along Route 6, we were built on industry, on manufacturing. That was our lifeblood for 150 years, really until the 1980s, I would say. So we bought this old building in 2021. Can I stand? Do you mind if I stand? I'm like Melinda, I need to walk around. We bought this building in 2021 for $375,000, which I tell people was $375,000 too much. Because we had never been inside it. We actually bought it pretty much sight unseen. Built around 1885. It was a full city block long with an overhead walkway, as you can see, to a building across a 4-lane highway. When we walked in, I looked to my colleague and we looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, what have we done?" So, whoops, wrong way. We began to rummage through really 5 acres of trash, which I'll show you a few slides real quick. But what we found was an envelope from 1898 in the building. That was one of the few rare quality finds. But it just indicates to me the history that was there during the war. There's some old pictures. Women were working in the factory in the 30s during World War II. So the building has a lot of history, that's my point. And we wanted to try to preserve at least some of it. In the corridor that the building is on was an industrial corridor, and it's also the main drag into the city of Erie. So that building that you saw, that first picture, that corridor, the 12th Street corridor, is peppered with buildings that look like that. So while Tim is leading the renovation of downtown Erie and putting hundreds of millions of dollars into downtown Erie, to get to see that, to get to the downtown, you had to drive by decay and decay and more decay, industrial blight after industrial blight after industrial blight. And this has been bothering me for 25 years, since my first trip to Erie, but I didn't know, I couldn't get to it. So finally, we were able to get to it. So back to what was inside the building. That one full envelope, but also contamination and trash beyond belief. 800 barrels filled with oils and debris. 240 totes filled with contaminants. I forget how many pounds of bags of asbestos. So what we ended up with was 800 drums of waste, 240 totes, 400 wooden crates, 3,000 pounds of liquid sludge, 6 oil tanks. There's one that we had to take out onto Cherry Street, for those of you from Erie. 4 stories full of coal ash, and 40 plus tons of just trash and debris. So it was a massive undertaking. It took us 2 years. This is some of the demolition, which was, once we cleaned it out, we could start demolishing it. It took us 2 years and $4 million to clean it out and demolish about 2/3 of the building. We couldn't preserve the majority of the building because it had been vacant since 1981, I think, and just allowed to decay. So we were only able to preserve what's at the far end that you can't see. So our goal, obviously, is to rehab what's at the far end and then rebuild new. But I want to talk very briefly about the money. So we were able to secure a $1 million actually 2 $500,000 EPA assessment grants, which we used for the cleanup. We were also able to take advantage because in our county, both the city and the county took their American Rescue Plan dollars and set aside a large portion for economic development. And in both cases, they granted to our agency funds for rehab. And we applied for that funding for this building and another building. So those funds are really what we leverage then, not only for the demolition, but then for the future project, which I'll show you if Chuck's able to fix the remote I brought.
Hurry up here,
Thank you.
hopefully.
So this is what the new building's going to look like. This is a rendering. Everything you see there is existing building, about 75,000 square feet. The original hulking building from that very first picture was a little over 200,000 square feet, took up a full city block on 5.5 acres. This portion, which is phase one, is going to cost approximately $25 million. We could build a brand-new building, 75,000 square feet, for half that price, but we wouldn't be preserving the history, which is incredibly important, and I think we would lose something along that corridor, even more important, and that would be our identity. And my hope is that this building provides the impetus for private businesses who still own some existing buildings along there to step it up a little bit. Now, there are others that we will tackle eventually, but we do hope that this will provide that impetus. So how do I get this $25 million? Well, I've been leveraging the original American Rescue Plan grants from the city and the county and the EPA grants for state and federal grants. So we were fortunate enough to get a $3 million federal appropriation from Congressman Kelly's office. He was literally the first dollar in because he toured that site and he got it. He understood what it meant in terms of its history, in terms of its reuse, and he really understood what it meant in terms of the blight. And so he was the first dollar in. And then we got a state, $4 million state RACP. And then we got a second $3 million RACP, and then a city CBDG grant, and on and on. So there's some financing in there, about $4 million in loans, and there's going to be some additional private financing. But altogether, we'll get to that $25 million through grants and private financing, and we'll get it done. They tell me 20 months, but I don't believe them. But we'll achieve, we hope, some historic preservation, a small mini business park on a main corridor that will ultimately be the impetus for what that corridor leading into the downtown can and should look like. And it's the first step in what we hope will be multiple projects. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'll hand it over to Ms. Daria.
Thanks, Tina. Oh, yeah, I have room. I was waving way at Buzz too, by the way, there was a bug up here. So, I don't know why I was- so I'm going to tell you about our project today, and I think what I can bring to this conversation is this. You heard from Erie Insurance. Yes, I mean, huge Fortune 500 company. And you heard from the Erie County Redevelopment Authority, large organization. ECAT was a brand new nonprofit. We had just formed, we had just organized our board. I was hired as the first executive director in 2019 of this organization. And I was told, find a place to do this work. And the work was pretty basic, youth arts programming, career development, fine. We went from that to, where are we going to do this work? We found this building on the east side of Erie. It's an old school building. Wayne School was built in, I believe, 1913. It had been closed by the Erie School District in 2017. So it was over 100 years in use, elementary and middle school, different configurations for a period of time. It was vacant at the time, except for a very small health center. So in 2012, I was part of a project with UPMC Hammett to put a school-based health center in the basement of this building. There was a big movement at that time. They thought if we put health centers in schools, it's going to help with kind of health and wellness. So we put a health center really where you can see kind of the design of those windows. And that was all that was left in 2019. 80,000 square foot building and just 2,000 square feet being used in the basement. And by that time, that health center was being operated by Primary Health Network. You might be familiar. They're the largest FQHC health center in Pennsylvania. And they were basically done. They said, look, we can't be in this large building. The sewers are backing up. No one's taking care of it. The district certainly wasn't putting money into a building that they had shuttered. And so basically they were ready to leave the community as well, even though they were serving quite a few patients there. So, and you can see I have a colleague who loves history, and she's done a lot of work on this. You can see a picture at the top there where the building was probably pretty soon after it was put into service, and then some of the work that we've done. So we went ahead and said, well, let's give it a shot. So we purchased the building from the Erie School District for $250,000. You know, my board said that was $249,000 too much. They thought the district would give it to us. By the way, I serve now as the president of the Erie School Board, and I'll tell you that was never going to happen. But they were very kind to us. They gave us a payment plan and said we could pay it over time. One of the things we did, though, was we felt it was very important as a nonprofit when we bought this property, we agreed to put it back on the tax rolls. And we probably didn't have to do that as a nonprofit, but we felt it was important for the revitalization of the whole community, for our school system in particular. And so we volunteered to do that with the district and actually had it put in our agreement of sale that we would put it back on the tax rolls. Again, it's located at 6th and East Avenue. Tim mentioned before on the east side, this is a very, very disinvested portion of our city, certainly. 80,000 square feet, as I mentioned. So we embarked on this project to renovate it, and unlike Tina, we really didn't have a lot of grants and things to come to the table, and we really weren't sure how to do it. And so we embarked, when I now look back, I'm not sure how we made it, but we embarked on the first New Market Tax Credit project in Erie County. And the way we came to that is, as we started to think about the renovation, we knew it was going to be, it started at $7 million. Oh, by the way, there was $1 million worth of asbestos remediation we didn't know. So that number kept bumping up and bumping up. We were at $11 million. We thought the building was in an opportunity zone. At that time, opportunity zones, federal opportunity zones were really kind of the talk of the town. Oh, we were across the street from the boundary of the opportunity zone. It's like everything that could happen was happening. But we were really lucky in learning about the New Market Tax Credit opportunity. And I'll tell you, we did a lot of work, and I had a board who just believed in the vision of what this could be, and we just took it a step at a time, and we were able to close on this deal by putting together a really interesting capital stack. So the New Market Tax Credit, I'm not even going to go into those details, because honestly, I think I've wiped it from my brain. $3 million came to us basically in equity from an investor, that was PNC Bank. We had $2.2 million of bank financing from Erie Bank and Northwest, who took a huge risk on this project because no one really believed that we could get it done. We had $1.5 million loan from the Erie Community Foundation, a loan from Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority, and a loan from the provider of our tax credit, CCG, which is a subsidiary of PHFA. We had a $1 million grant from the Hammett Health Foundation and a $500,000 RACP. The reason we were able to take out so many loans is because we did not need 80,000 square feet of space, and so we got creative about getting other tenants to come into the building with us. We only needed about 15,000 square feet to do what we wanted to do, and so we went out to look for partners to say, come be with us in this space, and in getting them to sign 10-year leases with us, we were able to take that to the bank and get the financing that we needed. So now in this building, by the way, we do have a historic designation now. We have a lovely plaque, thanks to Preservation Erie outside. But now in this building, we have created an ecosystem of healthcare and education and youth development and community development, and we have become a hub and I would say the beginning of a snowball for this community. We have in the ground floor a family-owned pharmacy, Darlings, which provides, there was no pharmacy within walking distance of this community. They came to the table and put a pharmacy in the ground floor. We have a lovely gymnasium that's used by the community. We have a beautiful community room that was the old cafeteria of the school that we open up, much like this, to community groups, public meetings, film, whatever is needed for the community. They know now that they can come to us. We don't even charge for that space. We have some small nonprofits on the ground floor. ECAT, my organization, we're on the first floor doing our thing, but doing it again in this ecosystem of other partners. Directly above us, United Way of Erie County agreed to move their offices to be in the building with us. They actually condoed their space. I had to learn about that too, condoing in this whole thing, but we did it, we figured it out. So United Way of Erie County is there with us with their headquarters. And then Primary Health Network, who I mentioned was down in that kind of basement rotting space. We built them a beautiful 8,000 square foot space. They see patients from all over the community. Their patients speak hundreds of languages. They're doing behavioral health, really a service to this community in a beautiful space. And then on the third floor of the building, to round it out, UPMC wanted to put a school of nursing in. There was a real question as to where they could do it. We offered this space, and I'll tell you what, if you have a 10-year lease from UPMC to take to the bank, I guarantee you that they're going to look fondly on your project. So having that really helped us get the project over the hump. Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry. John, I'll come right back to you. So really now, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of this project. We did not change anything about the facade other than an entryway that we built off the parking lot. We did that because we wanted a beautiful feeling when you walked in. There's a water feature in the hallway right when you're greeted. And in a neighborhood like this, I think folks really appreciate the fact that we really put time and energy into making this a beautiful space. In the inside, it's completely brand new. HVAC, electrical, everything was gutted and done right from the beginning. So we're proud of this project, and something that Tim and Tina both said, we could have demolished, or we could have built new, but we saved this building. And if we had not grabbed it, it would have simply fell into more and more blight. It would have been a daily reminder to this community that nobody really cared about them. And instead, we are using it now to do an entire neighborhood plan to do more and more things in that neighborhood. So I'm really proud of that project. I'm trying to help Chuck now think about market tax credits in a new way. So we are also here as a resource, and glad to be here with all of you today. Thank you.
Okay, so you've heard a legacy of success with the authority. You've heard a huge project success. We are the aspirational story. One thing, I will show you our project. It's an 88,000 square foot hospital, former hospital, that has been in mothballs for 11 years. And the first call I made was Tina. And she came down and looked at it, and the funniest thing to take away from that day is first she was like, oh, wait, I gotta tell you this. We're buying ours for $1. So my board might say that's $1 too much, but I had Tina come down and she goes, they're donating all this? This is a great opportunity. Then she walked a little further and then they're donating all this. And I really knew the scope of the project. So this is probably a $16 million project. We have 4.7 raised. We're on board with Project Resolve, which is helping us fundraise, as well as Infinite Erie. So again, I'm stressing that because of the partners making it happen. We got a $2.5 million RACP, and I'm gonna keep saying about partnership. This RACP, after all the political wrangling, was almost lost. And it would have been lost if this woman didn't step in with an itemization line she had for her business to help us get this. Then I was like, we still need more money. How are we gonna do this? And then Daria tells me about new market tax credits. We've been, I didn't tell you this yet. We were vetted, it's been about 16 months of working. It's not a fast process, but it's a good process. We were vetted for $2.5 million for this facility. In our last meeting, I didn't ask, they upped it to $5 million. So again, we still have a long way to go to nail that down, but it's happening. And then this center is going to house clean room, advanced manufacturing, technology, co-working, and office spaces. Well, you can read. Basically, it's a technology hub, but the biggest part of it is we're training our community for the digital jobs of the future. At this facility will be a fiber node connected to a tier 1 carrier. That is geek speak for really fast. So if you want to do day trading, come to our facility. Those microseconds that you lose elsewhere, you won't lose here. You want to create video games or animation, you can do it at this facility, which makes it desirable, I guess is the word. But we are basically building out a universal fiber network throughout the city of Corry, and we're doing it and reinvesting profits so we can build further. But it starts at this technology hub. And I'm going to be the Debbie Downer of the group. Not really. Rural communities like ours, this is big work to do. But I'm going to tell you why we're doing it. We're not building the fiber network just so people can stream movies more reliably. This is a game changer. So we all know we all know what happens in the Rust Belt. We're losing our population. By the way, in the last year and a half, that loss hasn't stopped, but it's slowed. It's slowed considerably. So we're trying to find the things that make people think that there's hope here. Basically, the Rust Belt happened, disinvestment, job opportunities were lost, blight sets in, cities lose their tax base, they're having to do more with less, maintenance is deferred. This is a story that pretty much any one of us from our communities could tell. Then poverty, and it's generational in Corry. So we looked at what are our resources and how are we going to use them to help the people living in this poverty who at this point don't see a way out. And also, since the Great Recession, you see how rural used to, or non-metro used to align with metro as far as employment gains? Since then, we have lagged behind. This is a harbinger. Also, with automation picking up speed, as well as the digital economy needing new and differently trained people, we are at higher risk of losing a lot of our jobs in rural communities to automation and a need for different skills. You scared yet? Sorry. Sorry, I just felt like heavy. Also, this is from the Brookings Institution. Digital economy jobs, of course, are agglomerating in large metro centers. In fact, the greatest percentage of the highest paying digital economy jobs reside within only 14 counties of the US. So, looking at all these things together, we said, what are we going to do? We're not a hub, we're not one of these metro centers, we don't have a slice of this pie. So I'm going to tell a quick story from my youth and we'll tell you why it's important. I lived on a dead-end road. It was a child, sorry, I'm all weird today. Dead-end road that ended at the dam. We owned a farm. I had to raise money. So we did the same thing here. I said, what do I have? I knew our ground had a lot of great night crawlers. So every night after dinner, I'd go water the lawn, I'd pull the night crawlers, I put up a box, sold them to the fishermen going out our road. So why this is important is you look at what you have and you look at the problems you have and you find a way around it. So what we said to ourselves is, we need to be part of this digital economy. We need to bring opportunity to the people living here. But how are we going to do it? What's our worm going to be, right? It is going to be creating a talent pipeline for jobs where people are trained with the goal of, oh, good. With the goal of a system that trains people pre-K through whole life. Think about how that changes, because we lose kids by 7 who have decided they can't do math. They check out. The information they get if they're in these cycles of poverty is that there isn't something for them. So we're going to step along beside and be beside them, showing them they have value and showing them that they have opportunity. Our talent pipeline aligns with regional and state goals. We'll be working in cybersecurity, aviation, computer coding, and, fiber optic technicians. So these are jobs that are going to be future-proof. They can be done remotely. So guess what? Back to that fiber network. People can live here. People can do gig economy jobs. And now all of a sudden, we have our resource. Our resource is our people. So we're working with our partners, and there's too many to mention, but Corey Higher Education Council, you're going to hear from after lunch, is doing the educational lifting. Impact Corey is providing the infrastructure. They're going to bring it home. And then the last thing, I don't even know why I aim at the screen. Is it up there? This is one hub. These goals that we're training for align with our region's desires. However, what if you went over to Warren County and decided you wanted to do a hub on renewable energy? Because Warren's got a lot of oil folks looking for the next boom. What if we could build a network of rural communities training for the jobs of the future, supporting their metro areas with different skilled workers, and giving our community a message of hope? So that's it for me, but fingers crossed it'll all work. And we wanted to do really quickly, if you had any questions, and then we're going to break for lunch. Oh, I do. Sam, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, if there are questions. Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. So a lot of it went to Ohio, because they have less stringent rules than we do. Some of it had to be shipped as far as Texas, which was quite pricey. And then some of it was to some landfills in Pennsylvania. So depending on the contaminant is dependent on, which I didn't know, but certain landfills can take certain contaminants. But I would say the bulk of it went to landfills in Ohio. And the furthest was Texas, and that bill gave me a heart attack. So I think it was $70,000 just in shipping. Yeah. Sure. Any other questions for any of us? Well, thank you all very much.
And I get to announce the next speaker. Sam Pearson is the Healthy Communities Manager for the Pennsylvania Downtown Center, and she's here to share today about active transportation and planning.
Thank you very much, Chuck. So, hi everyone. We've been sitting for a long time. Can everyone stand up and reach their hands over their heads and stretch out to the sides? Maybe take a few steps in place, a little wiggle. Okay, I work for the Pennsylvania Downtown Center. You can sit down now. I work for the Pennsylvania Downtown Center. You may be familiar with us. We do community revitalization. We work with communities and municipalities and nonprofits, like many represented in the room, all over the state, in collaboration with the Department of Community and Economic Development on the Main Street and Elm Street programs. So we also work with PHMC and the heritage areas where we're involved. I, however, am specifically focused on the WalkWorks program, which is a collaboration with a different state agency, the Department of Health. And that's why I need you to get up and wiggle around, because keeping people moving and having a little bit of physical activity on a regular basis is really a key to health. We all need that. We need to just build it in all the time. So I'm here to talk to you about the WalkWorks program and how it's relevant for the places that we, all along the Route 6 corridor. It may seem a little bit different from what we've been talking about up to now. People have been talking about the buildings, and I'm here to talk about the spaces between the buildings and the people who use the buildings. I have a million slides, and I'm not going to use them all. We're going to adapt. But I do want to talk to you about sort of the key here. My key learning objective is that I want you to understand that our goal is to have safe, accessible, inviting, connected networks for people walking, biking, using wheelchairs, and accessing transit to get to everyday destinations everywhere in the state. That is, actually, it sounds sort of banal and minor, but it actually doesn't exist. We have extensive, safe, connected, and inviting networks for cars, but we do not have that for people walking, biking, or using wheelchairs, unfortunately. On that note, how many people here walked here this morning? Yay! How many people here walked to some destination in the last month? That's great to see. How many people here have a way to walk to key destinations outside their own front door? I love, actually, that a lot of people said that they had walked somewhere, even though they don't have that outside their front door. That is not the be-all and end-all. It's great that you can still incorporate walking and getting to places. You sort of understand that you don't just operate on four wheels. So we're trying to connect people to places in ways that have been neglected for a long time. We've all gotten, unfortunately, quite used to that lack of infrastructure. We just sort of assume that's just sort of normal. But I want to look a little bit, and it's really going to be hard to see some of these slides anyway, so. Normally, so active transportation, like I said, walking and biking, it's not just the mammals, the middle-aged men in Lycra. It's not just people doing sort of intense activity, leisure activity, recreation. It's also people walking to the playground. It's people walking to get a coffee, going to a meeting. We want people to think about it in terms of just people of all walks of life, everyday clothes, also Lycra, but just, dressed for life, wearing a backpack, holding onto a child's hand, pushing a stroller, riding in a wheelchair. I'm going to skip the bike stuff. The main point of the bike stuff, just so you know, is that we think of biking as being a very niche activity, something that only a few people can do. That is the case with the current infrastructure we have. Given the current roadway infrastructure that we have, I can bike to destinations. Who else here can bike to destinations in their homes? It's a fairly small list, and this probably includes people that would be more interested in that. The reality is, if you have good infrastructure, up to around 60 to 75% of people would be interested in biking to get places if they could do so safely with their children, with carrying stuff like on a cargo bike, if it was maintained in winter, things like that. All the things that we know we can do in a car. So interestingly as well, cars, okay, here I'm gonna ask you this. What percentage of the population do you think is able to drive a car? And I'm gonna give you a couple of different options here. We're gonna drop down gradually. So who thinks it is 95% of the population? Who thinks it is 85% of the population? Who thinks it's 75% of the population? Who thinks it's 65% of the population? It tends to be around 65% of the population. So good on you, because actually more people raise their hands at 65%. It varies from place to place, but the number of people who cannot drive in any given place, there are multiple different people in that category. There are people who are too young to drive, who we often forget. There are people who are too old to drive safely. The average American outlives their ability to drive safely by 7 to 10 years. That means, and we all know people who drive to the end, there are a lot of people who outlive their ability to drive by 15 to 20 years. What is your plan? What will you do? So there are also people who cannot drive because they do not have access to a vehicle, they do not have access to a license, and 60% of people with a disability are unable to drive. So, in other words, it's sort of comparable to the whole population. This diagram is actually about cars. Everyone thinks I love it because it has pictures of bicycles. But what we have in our current situation, we have equality in our transportation system. We basically provide a transportation system that works really well if you have a car. We give everyone a transportation system. Everyone has the same transportation system. It works fairly well for some people, okay for some, is very dangerous for others, and completely unusable for others. What we really want is a transportation system that works for everyone, and it looks a little bit different for everyone. So cars will work for some people, bikes will work for some people, walking will work for some, transit. No one mode is going to work for every person all the time. We want to have a mix. What we have right now, unfortunately, is a monoculture of transportation for the most part. So why do we want active transportation? Again, this is like there are entire books written about this. So we're not going to go into this. I'm just going to say the Department of Health is interested enough in this to invest in programs to provide for planning to improve the ability of people to walk and bike to get to everyday destinations. We want to reduce acute injury from crashes, and we also want to reduce the chronic conditions that result from physical inactivity. People who live in walkable, bikeable communities are 20% less likely to be dealing with diabetes and obesity, among many other chronic conditions. It's also amazing for economic development. We know that it's good for recruitment and retention. For employees, it's also good for recruiting and retaining businesses themselves. Where do businesses want to locate? It's great for the environment, better for climate, better for air quality, water quality, long list of things. Fiscal responsibility, in addition to economic development, is on here because if we do it right, we can actually invest less and get more mobility out of our transportation system. Instead of spending on lane after lane for cars and acre after acre of car parking, we can invest in much more efficient, livable, and inviting modes. And it's great for equity, and I think the last slide sort of started talking about that. Again, I'm going to skip some of these. So we know it's really good to encourage active transportation. Why don't we do it? It's getting really dangerous. Basically, pedestrians in the last 10 years, pedestrians and bikes and people in wheelchairs, their death rate is skyrocketing. There's also a slight increase in all other traffic deaths, but it sort of masks that high rate of increase for deaths for pedestrians. We're up to 42,000 a year in this country. Why is that? Vehicles are getting bigger, taller, different geometries, to present an obvious danger to people, even fully grown people. Those vehicles are also built with really poor visibility. In this demonstration, only the driver can only see the head of this child. All the rest might as well not be there. What does this mean for our towns? People are also driving everywhere. We all need to go by car. Everyone wants to get there quickly. No one wants to spend all their time in the car, so they're driving quickly. When you're driving quickly, you actually have something called attentional blindness. You have to focus on the road coming at you. So if you're driving on the left at 15 miles an hour, you have something called a cone of vision. Your brain and your optic nerve, your visual system can take in a great deal of information ahead of you. You can see the street, you can see people on the sidewalks, you can see there's trees, you can see there's buildings and businesses. If you speed up and go down that same street, your cone of vision narrows down. So if you're going 30 to 40 miles an hour instead, you have to focus on that pavement coming towards you. If one of these pedestrians were to decide to cross the street, you would have no chance of being able to yield to them. If you saw them, they would be, quote, coming out of nowhere. When you did hit them, you'd also be more likely to kill them. And what does that do to your businesses? Did the people driving through your town at this speed see the town? Did they see the businesses? Did they see all the shop displays? Did they see the signs? No, it was literally nowhere along with the pedestrians. There's just a diagram of how likely you are to die at different speeds, but we're not going to go into that. This has very bad implications for all ranges of all life stages, but I want to focus on this. So we really need people to be able to get around. But we know, I'm sure everyone has seen things like this. This happens to be on a road near where I live in central Pennsylvania, actually in Shamokin Dam. So you see these people walking along a road. It is a 5-lane road. There is a curb. There is no shoulder. You only do this if you have no other choice. But wait, it gets worse. It is raining. They are going into heavy truck traffic, right? So this is the system we have. This is the system we've built. We probably all, driving here yesterday, I saw things like this. I saw at least 4 things, not literally the wheelchair, but I saw people leaping across roads. I saw people climbing up embankments to get to a business. I saw kids sort of, going in and out wrong direction between driveways, commercial driveways along the road. So we'd like to think that people say a lot, these roads are killing me, and we think that mostly people are talking about potholes. But in reality, between the potholed road and the wide, smooth road with perfectly smooth pavement, which is worse? The potholes are really hard on cars. The wide, smooth roads are really hard on people. The wide, smooth roads are actually encouraging people to drive everywhere and making it much more dangerous for the people who are either choosing not to drive or unable to drive. And the people who are driving everywhere are more likely to have chronic conditions. So we want, how do we get from these sort of bad situations that we have, the need to teleport to bus stops, impassable curbs just right next to downtowns, 6-inch curbs that might as well be 6-foot-high walls if you're in a wheelchair. We do know there are examples of ways of doing this. These are examples from towns in Pennsylvania, 2-way cycle tracks, making sure we have pedestrian accommodations on bridges. We have lots of new resources. A lot of these have been developed just in the past 10 years, including small town and rural multimodal networks, a great resource, which I actually think is about to be updated, which would be great, but just focusing on the fact that it's not just for big cities. There are models for this. I have a ton of resources outside. You will see that I have a whole table, and I would love to talk to people about what specifically is good for you, you need to learn about. WalkWorks specifically provides planning funds, more planning, to develop active transportation plans, and we have done so with over 50 communities around Pennsylvania, including some in this area, including Corey. Corey did develop an active transportation plan a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it was done in collaboration with Blue Zones and not with the municipality itself. We now only do plans with the municipality so that they will have a longer life and more likelihood of implementation afterwards. We've also done things like workshops. Earlier this year, we did a workshop in Kane, regional active transportation workshops. I see some of the people in the room who were there for that. Brought in people from outside, worked with Candace and Ralph to help put this together, brought in people from the Western Transportation Institute and the National Center for Rural Road Safety. We put on an entire day's worth of programming. And we had, so you have Candace here trying out one of the e-bikes. And we did a walking tour called a walk audit, where we're looking at what works and what needs work. And we did a bunch of classroom sessions throughout the day. Some of the takeaways are listed here. These are from Kane, but most of them are also relevant to a lot of our small communities. We know we want to maintain and upgrade our existing infrastructure. And we need to increase visibility for people and facilities, like making sure our crosswalks are high visibility, making sure there's enough lighting, making sure that vegetation isn't obstructing people's views. We want to cultivate partnerships, make sure we have kids and elderly people and working age people all working together. We want to develop programs that connect people to active transportation. We did a mural walk the night before. There are lots of ways to get people to think about how walking could engage with their lives. So you're going to get all of these presentations, so I'm not going to run through all of them, but the big lesson from Kane is we can do this, right? We can have these programs. I have resources out there about how to apply for funding for implementation, planning, small-scale programming activities. I think I was talking briefly to someone who's in church here. There are programs for churches. Could you do a bike to church day or a walk to church day? Could you get some equipment so that some people who aren't able to currently participate, you would actually have some loaner bikes to help with that. What I think I would like to have you do is we do have a WalkWorks newsletter. I provide information about active transportation for people in Pennsylvania twice a month. You can sign up for that. There's also a pedestrian pedal cycle advisory committee at the statewide level that advises PennDOT. They have quarterly meetings, and you can sort of follow them if you're interested. And we really want people to take part in the active transportation planning process, learning about how to plug in, knowing what municipalities are, what the jurisdictions are, and sort of supporting people who might be doing projects. I can imagine that the Innovation Hub here in Erie may have some transportation issues, like how do we make sure people can connect to that? Are the sidewalks good? Does there need to be a shuttle? Should there be some kind of pilot transit thing? And just, we want to make sure that we're looking for opportunities to connect people to everyday destinations, not just tourists, not just that sort of marquee economic development, but the where can I get a coffee? And how do I get that ice cream, those 2 free scoops of ice cream? Because that's my priority next. Okay, that basically wraps me up. You have my contact information, and you will be getting 1 million additional slides that go along with all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. We had a really great active transportation workshop in Kane just recently, and I know Route 6 is a road. Road is our heritage, and active transportation is something that is very, very, very important, and we're so glad that Sam could come here to talk to you about it, and she can come to your town as well. She probably has. We are now going to break for lunch.
Was mine. That was a great meal. Thank you, Twisted Sister, and thank you, Betsy Grinder, of your daily serving. So we talked earlier about partnerships and how we all work together. Matt Platts is the executive director of the Corey High Ed. As I said, Impact Corey's just the plumbers. Matt's going to take what we plumb and turn it into a future for our residents. He has been reaching out. As a CEC, he works with multiple colleges, universities, IU units, everybody to provide education to our region. So he's reaching out to all those partners to build systems. So I'm not going to give away the secrets, but one of the people he is working with is Brad Gleason, who's Director of Entrepreneurial Operations at Gannon University. And Brad is okay, you're going to have to hear this, Brad. He's on the phone. We're showing you how remote work can work. He had to be in 2 places at once, so he is. Brad takes an idea and makes it happen and makes it work in real time and does it for the right reasons, for the benefit of the people he's serving. So he's going to kick us off, and then Matt is going to take over to talk about their partnership in creating a talent workforce pipeline. All right?
Thank you, Chuck.
This is Okay, can you say something again?
Thank you, Chuck.
Good, can you hear? All right, all yours, Brad.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Chuck, and glad to be speaking with Matt Flatts about a collaboration we have. I'm thrilled to be talking to the Route 6 event goers and participants today, and really excited about sharing kind of a vision that has gotten tactical and operational that's benefiting the region. But it starts with putting a label to what's going on, and then we'll talk systems. So the label and what I was asked to start off and speaking about was the term gig economy. Gig economy to many people has a different connotation, but what I want to argue is the gig economy allows somebody with a core trained discipline to also be a creative in other ways and still take those ideas and see what the marketplace thinks about that. Many of you may know the platform Fiverr. Well, a lot of people that have professional services go on to Fiverr and sell those for a particular bidder. And that's a form of gig economy, as an example. And I think in Erie, we also are building a gig economy, but we're doing it in a systemic way by using the universities. So I'm going to ask if you can move the slide to the next. So I'm an old man of what we call a beehive system. And the beehive system is now 5 universities in the Blasco Library. The universities being Penn West, Gannon, Mercyhurst, Allegheny College, and Penn State Barron. And each of us takes on a very specific role without duplication to support small business. But it started 9 years ago with Amy Bridger from Penn State Barron and myself when I was at Mercyhurst University, having a non-traditional conversation around small business and being willing to look at the picture a little differently. And that has built a system at Gannon, but it's also changed the mindset of people that have business ideas. How do I move my business forward? How do I think about it? And now I think over these 9 years, there's a decentralized system helping Northwest Pennsylvania that really has shown outcomes. So if you don't mind moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about a case study with a little bit more of the background first. So what you'll see here is what I call the Gannon small business ecosystem. You can come into our doors physically. You can call us and set up an appointment. We get an intake. We start to cultivate your idea, and if it's starting to gain traction, especially if it's tech or tech enabled, we move you into our incubator. We right now have 23 businesses being incubated at Gannon in the Erie Technology Incubator. And then if you have more sophisticated outsourcing needs or research needs, under the label of Gannon's iHack initiative, we structure contracts to make sure we can support in that way as well, while making sure that all small business ideas move as a referral around the Beehive, universities, and library, and the Small Business Development Center here at Gannon. So that system drives support, and I'm going to show you the output of what that system does, and then bring it back to the Corey region. Next slide. This set of pictures just gives you a sense of the behind the scenes activity that goes on with our Beehive. What's hard for some to understand is our Beehive not only has existed for 9 years, we meet weekly. For 9 years, we meet every Friday at noon and talk about the system to make sure it's in good order and in good hands. So just as an example, I'll point you to the upper left-hand corner where you see a team of young students. That's our Beehive, and those students are from around the globe. So what's interesting, when they go home for school break, they never stop working. They're kind of a version of the gig economy just by what they do under the umbrella of the Gannon Beehive, as an example. But we're out in the community making partnerships, working with small business, and we have a bunch of events that highlight and drive that system in different ways, and these are just pictures that reflect that. If you could flip to the next slide. So very quickly with the Beehive focus tools, the third product that we were talking about was the Startup Capital Best Practices. That product gives a company an insight as to their competitors out in the marketplace and how did they finance themselves. And these are mental maps for a company to navigate crowd, talk to decision makers, and to understand where they're going to move their business next. That starts to educate a business, and that begins the referral process. If you can move to the customer and production slide next. These next set of slides I'm going to move through very quickly, but these start showing the output. It's 2.5 years of production, so you'll recognize our third year is a lower number, but it's half year of our production. So our production has gone up year after year. If you don't mind changing to the next slide. We've made a really concerted effort to bring more women businesses into our ecosystem, and the simple reason is there's nothing more motivated than a woman-owned business. And we have really raised that population in our production. If you could go to the next slide. We've made a really concerted effort to drive ideation and new businesses into a technology space. I use the joke, if I hear about one more coffee shop, I'm going to jump off a tall building. What I would prefer to hear is I want to create a technology node, and in order to drive that, I want to serve coffee. And it's a different mindset around the same business model, but I want the region to be thinking technology. One, because that's where the emerging spaces are from industry, and that's how we keep our university students in the area working on technology jobs. If you could go to the next slide. We also are working on diversity. Not only do we have more women-owned businesses, but we've increased our African-American population significantly, far more than the average rate in our county, but we still have a lot of work to do with Hispanics and other populations. Next slide, please. Just to give you a national stat, the system nationally that works with small business has a 10% success rate. Next slide. Our system, after 2.5, 3 years of operation, has a sustainability rate that breaks that entire algorithm. And as you'll see, 43%, 53%, 68% is not by accident. We intentionally wanted to break the algorithm. We intentionally wanted to mature business in a very supportive way. And it's showing significant results, if not national best practice results. Next slide, please. Don't laugh. I think sometimes presentations get so boring that I do an animal break slide just to break things up. So, but for full disclosure, my dog's on the left. She's no longer with us. My girlfriend's daughter's dog is totally clueless, called Bruin, and my brother's 3 pigs are in there because who doesn't like a pig? All right, we'll move on. Thanks for tolerating that. But let's get to the core stuff that has brought Corey and Gannon together. If you'll see here on this slide, you're looking at higher educational attainment on the right side. And you'll see the national average or national higher educational attainment is close to 40%. You'll notice Erie County and other surrounding counties are underperforming compared to that national average. And that's concerning at large. How are we going to embrace emerging industries if we're not educated to do so? So with this recognition, we've come at things a little differently. Next slide. I looked at the leaders in the county and I said, we need to think differently. What do you think? And of course, Chuck Gray is a force, and Matt Platts is quite an asset to Corey, and the two of them know how to think differently. And they were willing to talk about our beehive, come meet with our kids, and have a very different conversation. I have production needs, and they have a need for students to reach higher attainment. Some are going to go to work right out of high school graduation. Some are going to go to community college, and some are going to go to higher ed, but they need to have a mental map of that as well. And Chuck Gray and Matt Platts understand that. So they're willing to sit at the table, participate in our beehive meetings, and understand that there was something interesting that we were doing for small business. So how does that bring in Corey? You can go to the next slide. What you see here is the first proof of concept between Corey High School and Gannett University's Beehive to address a production need and a student attainment need at the same time. When I asked Chuck Gray and Matt Platts, what do you think if some of our Beehive work was outsourced to Corey? He said, how do we make it happen? And with very little drag, we got to work. We had to identify money. We had to identify students. We had to get in touch with Corey administrators, and we had to train the kids up, get our analysts cleared, and get to work. And that's happened within a matter of, I would say, 2 to 3 months, which is an exceptional compliment to Chuck and Matthew. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and let Matt fill in some of the blanks, but I wanted to tell you that this process is going to not only expose students to higher ed, but what they're learning in the Beehive is going to give them gig economy skill sets that will serve them the rest of their lives. Take it.
Thank you, Brad. So yeah, when I got to Corey, I started here at the High Ed back in January. We started to kind of look at the approach and everything that we had done up to that point. We were in the higher education space, mostly for adult students. So we were providing higher education opportunity to people who had already graduated. The problem is, like Brad mentioned, a lot of younger people in the rural areas, and we just talked about this a few moments ago, cannot conceptualize higher education. The percentages that Brad put up there before are not good. So we started thinking more globally, how can we help that situation? There's a lot of study right now about place-based solutions and how places like Corey in the rural area, Corey, Union City, Warren in Warren County, how can they get into this space and what can they do? Well, the fiber that's coming in is certainly going to help. But we were looking at a global operation and how that can actually work. The particular pipeline that we chose, speaking about coding, cybersecurity, fiber installation, and aviation, allows Corey to be in the conversation. You do not need to be in Silicon Valley. You do not need to be in New York City to be able to operate in those spaces. So this is a first step in providing those opportunities to the rural areas and giving students a look at what this looks like. Getting into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, building companies that live and work and stay in Erie County. There's going to be talk about mobile work coming up. This is kind of one of the ways that we can do this. And higher ed has space. These students actually come to our building every day. We found the money, we pay them to do the work. They're getting high school credit as they go, and they're introduced to the higher education environment and entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this is a proof of concept and a very small look at how we're doing it so far. The idea is that we hope to scale it, and I'll give it back to Brad now, and I'll jump in when he's done.
The gig economy piece. You also have to put your mindset into a young person's brain. They don't trust the government. They don't trust the future of their employer. COVID has taught them that instability is their future, and therefore they have to toggle between core career and side hustle. And I think with our Beehive system, we are teaching our students how to be consultants in various forms of tradecraft and research methodologies that will serve them the rest of their lives. I will tell you, Marcus in the picture didn't even know what the term entrepreneur was. And as we started talking, he realized that he sold $3,000 worth of fishing lures last year and didn't know that made him an entrepreneur. So the education and the tradecraft go together to help young people understand the value of this model and this system. And even somebody like Marcus can do great things with fishing lures, but they need to understand how this is able to build in our region and not require him to leave in any way.
Brad?
Matt?
Oh, there you are. You need the next
Yep.
slide?
No, I think the last slide just shows Corey and our Beehive network, but you can put it to the last slide. I guess full disclosure for the audience, I believe in this process because I also am a startup. So I took a mental health problem and I've turned it into a technology. And I'm just now entering the marketplace with my first mental health contract in Jamestown, New York. But not only do I serve in this system, but I'm also somebody who has grown up in the system as a startup and I plan to keep the business in Erie, Pennsylvania, as long as I can to serve the community and to do my part in the small business realm like many others are that we serve.
Not right now. Thank you, Brad. That was great. It gives a good look at how we're going to approach this problem here in Corey and elsewhere. The first steps that we've taken a look at. I know that, and I don't have any slides, and there's a good reason for that. For the last 2.5, 3 weeks, I've been writing a grant with the help of Melinda. It's been a pretty heavy lift. But what we decided to do is go for an EDA federal level grant in the recompete space. There's a lot of grants that come through that are from the federal level. They are not always situated well for this area or areas like this one. So we took a look at this one. Recompete was specifically for distressed areas like Corey throughout the United States. So we took a look at this. They want it written as a regional grant. So we have the Community Education Council. There are 8 others like us throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we looked at each area that was eligible, and out of those 9, only 6 were eligible. And we started looking at how we were going to approach it. Brad mentioned Amy Bridger at Penn State, one of the great thinkers in this area. We had a brief meeting with her about recompete. And she said, well, what do you want to do? Could we partner with what you do there at the Community Education Council and do branch campuses throughout the Commonwealth with Penn State? What do you think about that? A few weeks go by, we kind of round out the idea. We see if we have interested partners. We do. We went ahead and we went for that grant. So fast forward to now. No slides, it's just me. And we submitted that yesterday. I think we put a compelling grant forward. If we're fortunate enough to get it, it's the kind of big thinking that needs to take place in areas like Corey, all along the Route 6 corridor. There are opportunities everywhere for these types of things. So my advice is to just kind of think strategically and outside of the box, do a lot of reading. Chuck kind of gave me information when I first got here. The Brookings Institution that she mentioned earlier, a lot of good ideas about place-based strategy and how places like Corey can succeed. Dig into that research, understand how it works, and kind of sit down with people like Amy and Brad and other great people and resources that we have here and just come up with the ideas and figure it out. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to continue to do, whether we get the grant or not. But we're going to try to get it so that people in this area understand their opportunity a little better, and we can provide that for them. So thank you for the time. I thank Chuck for the opportunity to talk about this. I'm excited about it and excited about the future of Corey.
Thank you. Are we live? There we go. We're good. Next up, so now how's everybody feeling so far? Does anybody need to stretch? We're good. This has been completely amazing. We've hit a lot of ACT, we've hit ADAPT, we've hit ATTRACT, and we're now really going to hone in on the attractiveness of it. Being attractive when it comes to co-working cohorts. So Abby Peters is here, and Sean Fedorko is also going to be speaking, and on how co-working for tourism, for bringing people from outside your area and also being adaptable to the people who are in your town for co-working, giving them some co-working facilities. So please welcome Abby Peters.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. And I would like to thank Candace at the Route 6 team and the committee for putting together such an amazing day. I found value in all of the presenters, and the way everything tied together has been really great. So thank you. I know it's not easy, but it's worth it. So, and I'm going to start my timer so that I can stay on track with 10 minutes to give Sean time to talk and then have some Q&A. So I'm here to talk about The Wilds Are Working, which is a remote work program that our organization helped to bring to the Pennsylvania Wilds. So I work for the Pennsylvania Wilds Center for Entrepreneurship, which is a 501c3 covering the Pennsylvania Wilds region. As you can see up there, it's 13 counties. It covers about 25% of the state's geography and 4% of the population. So we're super, super rural. No big population centers other than Williamsport, and in between all of that space, we have more than 2 million acres of public land, which is bigger than Yellowstone. Lots of natural assets, heritage assets too. The Route 6 corridor goes through there, and we're also part of the Lumber Heritage region. So we are rich in all of these types of assets. So our organization's mission is to marry conservation and economic development in a way that helps to inspire and help our rural communities thrive. So how do we do that? Well, we've basically been developing an entrepreneurial ecosystem that has outdoor recreation at the heart, and it helps to build local rooted wealth in our communities. And so we do that by connecting almost 600 businesses and organizations through our value chain network called the Wilds Cooperative of Pennsylvania. We provide market opportunities through both brick and mortar and virtual commerce platforms. We offer professional development, and also we do all of that by tying in stewardship messaging, not only for our place, but also for our natural resources, but also for our community character and stewardship. So in 2020, we were talking with good partners and friends at Ben Franklin Technology Partners. They were working on an ARC, Appalachian Regional Commission Power Grant, focusing on retention within the Pennsylvania Wild regions, specifically around technology. They saw lots of students were going to Penn State and other universities and then leaving and not coming back. So what were some ways that we could use placemaking to be able to attract and retain the students and other types of technology talent? So there are a couple of different programs worked into that grant, one of which was this concept around remote work. We saw during COVID that urban people were flocking to the more rural areas to be able to enjoy outdoor rec opportunities, to be able to get that extra space. And in general, just as the previous presentation was talking about, there's been a mind shift. The American dream is no more 2.5 kids and a ranch house and 2 cars in the driveway. You know, the way people are working, what they're looking for in their quality of life is changing, and we have that quality of life in our rural communities. So we put in this grant, and at the same time that we were talking about this concept of remote work and what our communities could offer that way, we were also looking at other models. Hawaii was putting together a program called Movers and Shakers, which focused on bringing people in to the communities and also around volunteer opportunities. And then Alabama Shoals had a really great program that was looking at year-long stays and offering incentives to move to their community. So in general, you know, the idea of this remote work program wasn't just about trying to get people into our communities to stay for a month. It was really about collaboration, about placemaking, about really owning that story of who we are and what we are and how that helps to attract and retain people. Exploration, being able to explore 2.5 million acres of public land, and partnerships. This program could not work if we were just running this by ourselves as an organization. This was really about partnering with communities and then within the communities, stepping up and developing additional partnerships. So it has multiple benefits, both for the workers that come and stay, but really for the communities, and the community side was what we really focused on. I moved to the Pennsylvania Wilds in 2007 from Los Angeles to restore an old school building that we bought for about the price of a Corolla, and now is about worth a Rolls Royce. So I felt the pain of the earlier presentations on restoration. But when we moved to the area, everyone was friendly, but we didn't know that you go to the Elks on a Friday night for fish fry, or if the local art gallery is having a fundraiser, that's what the social event of the month would be. And so we really wanted to think about how could we help our communities develop a welcoming committee? How can they look at the assets they have, take an inventory, and create experiences for people coming into the community so once they're there, whether they're remote working or any type of employment that they have, they find a spot where they can fit and they can thrive. It was also about investing in the local communities because we had stipends, and also creating a feedback loop. You know, you might be told by your internet service provider that you have great broadband throughout your community, but then you might find out that when someone's staying at an Airbnb, they don't actually have it there, right? So different feedback like that from the remote workers was also a big component of what we were looking for. So how it works is the PA Wild Center developed the website wildsareworking.com. On that platform, we open up our application. Sorry, I should step back. Before that, we select our host communities. People can apply through the website. The community itself reviews the applicants, and they decide who's coming to stay in their community. Then they arrange for lodging so that the remote workers come in and stay for 4 weeks, and they receive $1,200 and a Yifty gift card, which is a digital gift card. So that money can only be spent at businesses that have the Yifty card, and those are all local small businesses throughout the region. Participants are also connected to different volunteer opportunities in the community and also have different host events that community has decided to put on. So they might have set up a buddy system, they might have welcome events, they might take people on group trips. It's really up to the community on how they want to set up that part. And then we receive feedback about the experience that we then use to help strengthen the program and provide to the community so that if they want to take action on any of the feedback, they can. So really, there's the community role side, and they are that local capacity to implement the program, to make the connections, and then we have the PA Wild Center side, which is more about the higher level program design, helping with the major funding, getting that capacity and connections, and marketing the program. So far, we've been able to have the program in 4 communities. We just finished. Our 4th community was born, and so we actually have been lucky enough to have 2 Route 6 communities participate. I don't have the results from the most recent communities because we just wrapped that up. So this focuses on our pilot communities, which were Bellefonte and Kane. So we had 11 remote workers stay for the first year. We received over 100 applications that were then narrowed down to those 11. We had a marketing investment of about $31,000, and $50,000 was invested straight into the community businesses through lodging, the stipends, welcoming activities, and also contracting. We also had a way for communities to really identify more of their local assets and really kind of take a look at what they're doing that way. And then again, that community outreach and remote workers feedback loops. So in Bellefonte, you see that the red shows how much was on like food and beverage. This is just to give you an overview of how these investments came into the communities, mostly through lodging, then also through the gift cards. Going the wrong way. There we go. Another part of the program was to develop templates for window wraps. So these were window wraps that went into abandoned or blighted buildings, right? So a lot of downtowns are in different phases of revitalization. So it's kind of tough for the community or other investors to think about what a building could be or what else is happening in the community if they see that empty storefront that's been kind of neglected. So this was an opportunity to highlight outdoor rec assets or other businesses that weren't maybe in the downtown on these window wraps so that people in the community, visitors, and the remote workers could get a sense and kind of inspiration as to what else is happening in the community. This is some of the window wraps in Kane. Oh, yes. Oh, great. Yes, see? So this was Kane, Kate Kennedy News. So like things like this and the momentum really helped the community, and it's been more than a year since they had the remote workers there. And then this is just some of the participation shots. This gentleman was so excited to come to the region. He had a spreadsheet of like 600 lines of things that he wanted to see, and he saw most of them. And then also another feedback loop that happened in Bellefonte was that the co-working space they were utilizing, the broadband wasn't as efficient as they needed, and they would have liked a little bit more space for taking personal phone calls. Springboard, that co-working space, talked about it amongst their board members. They moved to a larger space, and they've now seen participation double. So it's that kind of communication and feedback is really what we were looking for to be able to help communities beyond just that 4-week experience. All right, I know that my alarm did go off. So just real quick, we did find challenges in it, and I think that's the other really important part of this. There were definitely some things that we didn't anticipate, some things that the communities didn't anticipate, but we really looked at it as a way to find the solutions, right? Because you don't know you have a problem until you know it's there. So we kind of, again, that was a big part of it, was to be able to continue doing that with the communities and continue to grow the program. We will open up applications for host communities before the end of this year so that they can participate for the last year that we have currently funded will happen next year in 2024. But I will, in order to respect Sean's time, I will stop, but I can answer questions later if we have any. Thanks.
That's a great program. I'm hopeful to meet some of the people who come through it and learn about their experiences myself. So I'm going to build on one of the points that that Abby made. She talked about co-working spaces and how these are solutions for communities, in particular for remote workers who are coming to stay and even consider making a community their new home. These are part of what make places sticky, and I've been working on building a co-working community, leading a group in Erie, PA for the last 8 years. So I'm Sean Fedorko. I run Radius Co-work in Erie. Has anyone heard of Radius? Okay, yeah, like half of you have. Awesome. So we were a collection of people, there were a dozen of us, who had decided either to come back to Erie or had been in Erie, but we were lonely. I was from Erie, had left for school, had been working in DC. I came back for a 6-month contract and thought, this will be nice. I'll visit my parents, I'll get my stuff out of their basement, I'll do a little bit of work, and then I'm going back to DC. Along the way, I had planned to work in a co-working community, but couldn't find one. And nobody I met in Erie knew what one was. And so we found the first dozen people who were on board for this idea, and we started one. And we started growing it. And we found that it was immensely delightful, just as we expected, but we also found that it was immensely helpful to our professional careers and the businesses that we were fostering. And so I had intended to, again, leave And it turned out that after about 2 years of telling people I'm only working on this for 6 months, I realized this was actually just my business. I had become an entrepreneur, not an academic, and decided to stay. So what we have built that to now is 180 people with over 200 alumni representing 67 currently incorporated businesses, and in 10,000 square feet of 24/7, 365 available co-working space in the heart of downtown Erie. We've been part of that downtown community revitalization. We've been part of that entrepreneurial ecosystem, working often with the beehive that Brad Gleason described, and emphatically promoting remote work. Our membership is about a third remote worker, about a third indie, a consultant, a freelancer, someone in the gig economy, and about a third part of a small business, an entrepreneur. Our members represent the coffee shop owners downtown, the breweries downtown, but also the software developers, the web developers, the sales companies. They're freelancers who are fractional CFOs or part-time HR consultants. They're remote workers who work for McKinsey and Deloitte and for big companies like Zillow. But they're also remote workers who work for little esoteric companies nobody's ever heard of. They've just chosen to make Erie their home. And why these co-working communities are so important are because they do two things. And there are a lot of details in this, but they make life more delightful and they make work more successful. So when you come together in a co-working community, what happens is often it's somebody who has relocated from another town, or somebody who has decided that they're going to take some kind of entrepreneurial journey or venture. And in the former, when somebody comes to town, they're looking for a social sphere. Well, where do we go, right? If we look at the last 50 years in America, we've seen kind of the decline of walkable front porch communities where everybody knows your name in these urban cores. We've seen the decline of kind of church community participation. We've seen the decline of civic institutions. Not many of us are in bowling leagues anymore. So between work and home, where do you find your third place? Where you're going to meet people that you like. People who don't determine whether or not you get promoted, right? Because that's not always the most comfortable friendship. People who aren't competing with you for the same job. And people who aren't your spouse. Where you can often just be a person and a professional, not mom. And not the boss. One of our members is an HR professional. She worked for Zillow, for Christie's auction house, and she loved it because it was the first time when she could just make dirty jokes, right? Here you have the HR lady. When she would walk into a room, everyone would hush up because that's the HR lady. But here in the co-working community, she was just surrounded by peers. And that's delightful. That's sticky. That woman had come to Erie because unfortunately her mother had passed away. And she reconnected with wonderful old friends and decided to stay for years now, reinvesting in the community. Others of our members have come to Erie for their first job after school. They got a connection through a friend or a family member, but then they fall in love with the town. They build friendships. And then, through the co-working community, have gotten remote jobs, often doubling or more their income. Now they buy homes and they reinvest in that local community. But they found that remote work opportunity through their connections in the co-working space. They chose where to buy their home because it was proximate to the friends that they had made in the co-working community. And so cities like Erie are, of course, a little bit bigger than communities like Corey, but we have the exact same struggle. We're not New York City. I imagine some of you get to Erie occasionally. It's not exactly a big downtown. It's like 12 blocks in a straight line, and there's not a whole lot there. We're revitalizing that community just as many of us are bringing that vitality back into the rural communities along Route 6. And we're using a similar strategy. It's export knowledge work. Brad Gleason pointed this out. He had said, I don't need another person to propose a coffee shop to me. I think we need more coffee shops in Erie, PA. That's fine. But when we focus our entrepreneurial resources on cultivating talent, or when we focus our attraction efforts on bringing in talent, they should be knowledge workers who are exporting the products of knowledge work and importing disproportionately higher salaries or importing the wages of a business that become net GDP for a region. And these people contribute immensely to our communities, especially in co-working spaces. They bring their networks, not just of their professional networks or of their business community, but of their friends. They bring interesting people to join us and make our lives more fulfilling. And that's what people like me who run co-working spaces help facilitate. So as you consider building these kinds of spaces that do this work, I want to talk a little bit about what you're getting into. A co-working space is not a big empty room with a bunch of desks and a coffee pot and a router. Those things are there. But when you form co-working communities, if we only think about the infrastructure, we can run into problems like what Abby pointed out. Springboard and Belafonte is cool. They've been around for a long time. But what good co-working spaces will do is craft themselves around the needs of the community that emerges to use that space. And that takes a lot of facilitation. So as you think about enabling the building of these kinds of spaces and communities, think first about the people you're going to enable, who will be the facilitator to aid them, and then craft your spaces, find your funding around those emergent needs. And then keep in mind, you're going to have to moderate these things. A lot of what I do is helping the guy who's just telling too long of a story and someone's trying to get back to their desk to get something done, to understand, oh, conversation's over. Oh, hey, and anyway, we got to get back to our desk, right? It takes facilitation in this room to keep these co-working communities healthy, to make those social spaces comfortable. That takes physical design. It also takes emotional intelligence. It takes attention to read the room. And it takes a little bit of technical know-how because you've got to help people use the printer because most people can't figure out how to use a printer, right? You've got to be the one to help them with that. So when you think about these kinds of spaces, these are the kinds of social problems, technical problems, infrastructure problems that you're going to be considering, and you're going to have to be able to adapt. Just like Springboard adapted. As you attract these kinds of talent and people into the room, I'm not just ignoring my time, I'm just amped up. I got a minute left. As you attract these kinds of people into the room, your community will evolve. Its needs will evolve. We're seeing that as many more young parents have joined our space, where they're having their first or second kids and they're trying to get out of the house. They've become a remote worker, and remote work was great during the pandemic, but now the kids are running around like crazy and they don't have an office and they've just got to get out of the home. Well, now you have a huge contingent of early parents, late 20s, early 30s, and they're trying to arrange play dates. They're trying to solve daycare problems, and now you have new emerging collective needs that as a co-working community, you can go advocate for. When we're helping our entrepreneurs, we're going and bringing in attorneys and CPAs. We're teaching classes, and we can get them to come and donate their resources for free because we've got 10 or 12 potential customers in the audience. When we're helping our parents, we're reaching out to daycares. We're reaching out to babysitters who can help coordinate shared solutions for our members so that they can all get out of the house and come to our networking events. I'm leaving here immediately after this for one of our networking events focused on leveraging tax credits in the state of Pennsylvania to facilitate and grow your businesses. So when Abby talks about bringing these kinds of people in through programs like the PA Wilds or programs that you may create, when you think about your local population who you're trying to engage in remote work opportunities or trying to facilitate in their entrepreneurial venture, think about not how you or your organizations can provide all of their solutions. Think about how you can bring these people together so that they provide solutions for one another. Because I'll tell you, I do not solve most of our members' problems. My staff do not solve most of our members' problems. Most of our members solve one another's problems. We just put all the smart people, like attorneys and lawyers and web developers and cafe owners and brewery owners and Deloitte consultants in the room. They became friends, and then they helped one another grow and thrive. So I hope I've kind of told a little bit of story of how co-working works. You can go online and look at Radius Co-work. We've got tons of pictures, tons of videos, tons of stories, and you're welcome to reach out to me at any time with questions. But I think now Abby and I are going to answer some questions about attraction and retention of a remote workforce. Sure, co-working spaces are typically set up just like a gym. Think of it as a gym for businesses. You go there because it has better equipment than you've got at home, because people are running hard on the treadmill, and that inspires you to run hard. And you can learn. Somebody comes over and says, oh, hey, if you lift that weight this way, you'll hit the muscle group better. We do the same thing, but for business, they pay the same way. It's a month-to-month membership, and there are typically tiers based on level of need. Do you need a private office? Do you need to be there every day? Or are you just stopping in once a month?
Yes. So one of the biggest challenges, it was interesting because most of the people applying for the program were excited to go somewhere rural. And I think they had an idea of what rural would be like, but I don't think they truly understood how rural it was going to be. But most of them were really open to this type of a situation. But there was one young lady who, I think she was just at a point in her life where she was just trying to figure out what she needed. And she really did not understand how rural it was going to be. She came from Philadelphia, and she was doing a lot of soul searching around it. It was almost too quiet for her, and she wrote a piece about it that went through, I think it was one of the Philadelphia magazines. And in doing so, it wasn't the most positive reflection on the experience. And it wasn't totally negative, because if you really read it, you say, oh, okay, well, like, she didn't want to be somewhere where, like, the big event on a Friday night is going to the high school football game, right? Like, it's not where she is in her life, so I'm glad she had that experience to go through. But I think from her editor's side or from her side, I think there needed to be a little bit more of adding to the story that this was a reflection in general, and that could have happened anywhere. And I think it wasn't as positive about the community as it could have been. But I think otherwise, there hasn't been anything else that stuck out that was such a huge challenge that it couldn't be figured out. Because really, it was each community doing that true inventory of what their assets were, how they wanted to be able to welcome people in. And actually, almost all the communities said that when they started putting out the press release that they were doing this, all of a sudden remote workers came out of the woodwork. And they're like, oh, I want to be part of this. I've been here for like 2 years. And so I think, to me, I didn't see any other huge challenges that way, and I could be missing something. So there were 2 communities that participated. So if you guys saw bigger challenges that you would want to talk about, or did you really think that kind of it just helped you guys like really kind of look in? I don't want to put words in mouths, but anything? It was all gravy. No, just kidding. Yes. And so it's not what it's, yes. Yeah, so I think that would be a challenge actually too, is also the age groups. Like we don't necessarily have as many people in the age group of that demographic. I think, oh gosh, I just had another one thought in my head and it went out. Oh shoot, maybe it'll come back. Oh yes, so we were very, very clear about that up front on the website, that the downtowns are walkable, right? But you still might not be able to walk to a grocery store, and you cannot walk to the Pennsylvania Wilds. You cannot fly into the Pennsylvania Wilds and get an Uber. You cannot. You literally cannot get dropped in by helicopter. No, you have to be in a car to get here. So we were very, very clear about that up front and in the interviews so that everyone had the right expectation that way. I know what one challenge was. There was one participant who just had everything go wrong for him. He got COVID. He got a parking ticket and towed, which never happens in Kane. Someone called the local police and was like, there's a suspicious bike out front of the pizza shop. So so stuff like that, which again goes to welcoming communities, but again, people know who they know. And so, yeah, so I'd say some of those were some of the challenges, but we got through them. Oh, Savannah, yeah. Yeah, I think the feedback loops were like super important for everybody. Yeah, lodging, yeah, probably lodging, and I think, but I do have to say that in Emporium, which is in Cameron County, I think Cameron County has like 6,000 residents total. They had the second day, one of the participants was looking for houses, and they've moved. So they did say, and one of the other participants rented long-term. So, and everybody in their survey said that they would consider moving within like the next 15 to 20 years. There was only like 2 people that said, nope, not for me. And that's okay too. Like, people need to be able to say that. Yes, and so yes, there have been very diverse applicants, and again, it's up to the community on when they interview and who they choose. And so some communities decided that they wanted to focus on certain types of skill sets. Some people said demographics. Emporium very specifically was looking for people who were ready to relocate. Like, that was part of the interview process. So there is definitely diversity in the applications, and then it's within each community how they choose who's going to be participating, and then also how they set up the welcoming side of that. Chuck.
Yeah, so we do a bit of soft vetting. What you're looking for are people who know how to conduct themselves in this kind of a shared environment, right? You know, I understand a little bit of decorum. I understand how to not to be abrasive. You know, I understand how not to pick a political fight. You know, to discuss complicated and challenging ideas respectfully. But largely people self-select. Right? These are places of rights and responsibilities. You're not just a consumer. Unlike going into the gym, where the gym staff take care of everything in the facility, you just go to walk in, lift your weights, and leave. People who share co-working spaces share the responsibility for maintaining it. We make that really clear up front. And so as we communicate our ethos, our expectations, our code of conduct, people get a sense for whether or not they're willing to commit and participate in that kind of a healthy way. We get a sense for whether they're willing to do so, and we either facilitate their engagement, accelerate it, or maybe we put up some deeper vetting to help manage their expectations and make sure that they're going to be a positive contributor. We have only in 8 years had to deny membership 3 times. It's pretty rare. Usually self-selection is the right mechanism. And to the question about diversity, as you do this well and you bring together people who interact harmoniously and respectfully, a lot of the people who are your remote workers that you don't know are here or in the woodwork, they start to come out. A lot of the people who, you know, are interested in interacting with people in different challenging conversations and around complex subjects outside of the power structure of their employer, they start to hang out somewhere, and so they find each other. That diversity within your community gets represented in a room, and people who walk into that room see themselves there and feel very comfortable. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of soft vetting. There's a little bit of make sure everyone feels represented and seen, make sure people can engage in the conversations they want, and the people you bring into the room are going to respond appropriately. Do you mean whether we limit, say, the number of people who compete to provide the same service? No, actually, we're very emphatic about people not competing over the same slice of pie, but baking a bigger pie. Very early on, we had 2 companies join the same week who did the exact same thing, and we were very worried. We weren't sure whether this would create a lot of conflict, whether they would both leave or one would leave. Within a month, both companies were run by a married couple. Within a month, they're having the other couple over for dinner, and in 6 months, they had gone in on a contract that was bigger than either company could have tackled alone. Now, they didn't win that contract, but the point was that by discovering, oh, we both do this, instead of fighting over the same business that existed locally, they said, well, if we team up, we can go get even bigger business than either one of us could take on alone. And so we try to teach that ethos. Yes. So sometimes you have a large enough community of a particular sector that you can focus it, such in like multimedia. Or a great example in Erie, PA, there is a co-working space called Thrive, run by an extraordinary woman, Penny Porter, and it is focused on wellness professionals. The entire space has been built to be HIPAA compliant, which our space is not. So we could not facilitate therapeutic professionals like they do. They've built a space where those professionals can come together and they can facilitate that. I absolutely can. If anybody would ever like any resource for setting up a co-working community, we share all of ours freely, our terms and conditions, our privacy policies, our code of conduct, anything that you want to enable the creation of a space, we give away freely. You're welcome to contact me for that.
I just want to end on one comment that, some of the feedback we've gotten, because 2 of our communities had co-working spaces already and 2 did not. And actually, as we go into the last phase, we're going to push even harder the importance of either already having a co-working space or a type of community space where the remote workers can meet on a regular basis, because some of the feedback was definitely different from the communities without the co-working space. They missed that opportunity, and they noted that they would have liked that opportunity to have the social connection, and so. In general, if you're looking at a program like this or to bring a co-working space, as Sean said, there's tremendous value in it.
Well, thanks.
Is that my phone up here? Oh, I think I reached my phone.
You got your phone? Do you have your phone?
I have my phone.
Aaron, wait, don't leave yet. You said 2:30, and I still have like 8 minutes. All these feels going on. One, I want to thank the speakers who all came in today. I'm going to scratch that, erase that backspace. I want to thank the people working who were willing to come here and to teach the people across the Route 6 corridor about the work that they're doing and speaking about it. This is the reasoning of why Corey is the Heritage Community of the Year last year. This is the work that they're doing. And thank you so much for bringing other people around the corridor to come in and learn. I'm kind of a little choked up a little bit already, but I also wanted to thank, we have 2 funders in the room, DCNR and DCED. So please do, I can tell you that everybody who does projects, you never do them without partners. And please, when you're doing your projects, bring in our funding partners. Have conversations, because if they can't personally fund them, they have a team of people who can possibly make those projects come to fruition. I want to thank Les for having us at this wonderful facility. The committee, I'll probably thank them 6 more times, for the hard work and the bringing each of these speakers in, because this lady knows everybody personally, and bringing them in. Everybody all works together. But wait, there's more. So there's a walking tour that's going to be happening here at 2:30, so in about 8 minutes. So if you want to stretch your legs, grab some more to drink, have a snack before you head out, we're going to do a walking tour. That ends around 3:30. Maybe do a little moonshine tasting at Before the Barrel Distillery. And then we're going to meet back here in the parking lot around 5 p.m. for the people who have signed up and who are going to be joining us for the farm-to-table dinner at 3 Pillars Farm.
And I wanted to add, because some of our events took shape after the original registration went out. So for anyone not taking the historic walking tour and doing the moonshine, we have a free round of golf for the first 10 participants out at North Hills Golf Course, which is gorgeous. And it's a round on us. You get your round of golf, you get a golf cart, and you get a round at the clubhouse. Also, 4 o'clock, if you're interested, we're making mini fall mosaics down at Wingers and Williams Place right downtown. That is a class. I can't wait to make that. You can still make the farm-to-table dinner if you'd like to do that. And then tomorrow, after our event, right after we finish tomorrow, we have a Green Spaces champion called Bob Frazier. He has single-handedly built a rustic trail around our golf course, and it's called Hiking with Bob. So if you want to get a hike in before getting in your car, if you aren't staying, it is a beautiful walk, and we're hoping you can join in because you will be the first people on this trail to give us feedback about signage, about, boy, I feel a little bit, I need a little more direction here. It's going to help us shape this trail before we open it officially. And then if you're able to stay over another night, and if you need to crash at my house, you don't have a room, give me a shout. I have 3 big dogs, but otherwise you're welcome. The first Fridays are amazing here, 5 o'clock, weather permitting, 3 hot air balloons going up over Corey, 5:30, Pennsylvania Council on the Arts will be here, and we will be presenting huge art projects that our artists have been working on that are going to be installed next year. Chugga Chugga Moo Moo, mug chugging contest. Come on, it's all in there. And if you stay to the illumination parade, come on, have a good time with us. So it is a great weekend. Oh, and Saturday, I forgot. Saturday's the fly-in breakfast and lunch. You can go up in a plane for $25 a person, meet the authority members. Yes, I'm learning about airlines. And just, enjoy. If you can stay, come enjoy it, and we're just so pleased to have you here.
And that's a wrap, folks.